Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Luffy got harem with Monet, Robin and others. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, SeanMungo. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Let's begin this story. Luffy, you need to be careful. It wouldn't be the same as last time you were there, a woman's voice said. Yeah, but I can't make any promises. With what he told me, there's no way I can keep going on as I did. Playtime is over, and it's time to show them what it means to be a pirate. A young man's voice rang out with a cheer, a silhouetted face with an ear-to-ear grin. Just be careful, Luffy. The woman's voice ran out with hearts for eyes. I pack all of your favorite foods to last a month for any man, she said lovingly, as she dropped an inhumane-sized backpack in front of the young man. Amazing. Thanks, Hancock. The now recognized man known as Luffy said, jumping up and giving Hancock a hug, receiving a very large crimson blush across her face, and many flirty-type dreams popping up in her head as she fell into her daydream. This is where he was. He was a pirate. This wasn't some child's game, and he would prove it to everyone and become the best. The man with the most freedom in the entire world, Luffy thought. He had trained for those 2 years for this. The words of wisdom he received from Rayleigh, the strength he gained from the island. It was time to shine and meet. Oh, the meat, that's the first thing he'll go for as soon as he hits the archipelago. A restaurant. Maybe one with barbecue. Don't have any money though, but maybe I could sneak out, that might work. As Luffy exited his thoughts with a huge smile, he turned to the front of the boat to see the archipelago in the distance. Are you ready to do this? A voice called out to Luffy. Luffy turned around to see Rayleigh exiting one of the doors on Hancock's ship that led to a room of something. Yes, get ready to buy a newspaper, Luffy said with a smile. I already assumed I would need one, but I can guess you're gonna do something big, Rayleigh said, turning his gaze towards the archipelago. But you know what you're getting into, right? Rayleigh asked one last time to make sure the boy was ready for what he was about to do. They have a lot of security out there right now. Fortunately for you, there aren't any admirals there at the moment, so you can cause some trouble without the fear of worrying about one of them. Although there's still a bunch of high-level guys waiting for troublemakers like you, Rayleigh said with a laugh. Huh? Oh yeah. I'll be fine, THX Rayleigh. Luffy replied just as they anchored the ship. We set up a rowboat for you. I assure you it's 100% safe, but we can't just show up in this ship. It would attract too much attention to you. Also a map of where you need to go. It's Grove 13. Yes, thanks. Time to go, Luffy yelled cheerfully as he jumped into the boat that was docked on the right side of the ship. Unfortunately for Luffy, as soon as he jumped into it, it broke the hook it was stabled on and fell towards the top of the ocean. SPLASH. Everyone aboard the deck ran over to the railing and looked over to see if Luffy was okay, although he was already rowing towards the archipelago. But he didn't leave without one last goodbye. Thanks. I'll see you guys later, Luffy yelled at the top of his lungs. Bye, Luffy, Hancock yelled with hearts for eyes, as the others waved and said goodbye, as they watched Luffy move onward towards the Sabati archipelago. It was a long wait, but now he's back, and it's time to make something happen. Luffy was off, with the bright smiles his friends gave him, as he sailed onward in his little rowboat towards the... He needed to reach the 13th grove if he remembered correctly. They would all be meeting at Shaki's place, and regroup, and from there he would see what they would have to do. The ride on the rowboat to the wasn't that long. It lasted 15 minutes until he was nearing a small dock at the edge of the island. Luffy looked up at the tall tree to see the number 51 painted in big white letters in the middle of the huge tree that towered above the entire area. Very good. I've been here for a long time if I've forgotten how high it is, Luffy let out with a huge grin, getting a new idea in his head. I bet it would be faster if I just climbed it. Then I could see where I need to go faster, Luffy's brain thought, as he launched towards the bottom of the tree. Setsu, Luffy said in a low voice, as he disappeared and reappeared at the top of the tree. Over the long 2 years Luffy had trained, he had gained new powers, and the ones he already had grew exponentially during the training. He had a few new tricks up his sleeve to use whether in or out of battle. Luffy's strengths were not the only things to have changed though. Luffy was a bit taller now, and his clothing options changed a bit. He still wore a red shirt, but it was now unbuttoned completely, showing off his six-pack with an X scar across the chest from Marineford. He now wore black shorts reaching a bit lower than his knees, similar to the ones he wore at Engine's lobby. His sandals were still the same, and his ever-present straw hat from Shanks. Another addition to his clothing was his new black coat he now wore. It was black leather on the outside, with gold cuffs at the sleeves, captain-type gourds on the shoulder patches colored black, and the inside was lined with white fur, very puffy fur. Around his neck was a big chain with a lock that kept it closed slightly. He now did not look like a foolish boy trying to take on the Grand Line. He now possessed a new look, one that looked more or less like a demon in human skin. It wasn't that he was scary, or that he wanted to be, it was just the impression that his clothing gave off this set of clothing anyways. Ah, I see it, Luffy suddenly yelled out, as he was surveying the area from the top of the large tree he had jumped on. I found you. Luffy laughed, as he got set into a Gum rocket stance, and shot off at super speeds towards Grove 13 that he had located. Although it was very far, he was pretty sure he could make it at least halfway with only the Gum rocket. Unfortunately for Luffy, he may have gained strength and clothing, but he didn't gain brain cells it seems, as he smashed into a cart loaded with cabbages as he was nearing the ground. He had intended to land it, but Kinda got distracted by a certain smell. Meshi. Luffy erupted out of the debris, cabbages flying left and right as he jumped up. Meshi meshi meshi. Luffy yelled as he ran off towards the smell of food, as the poor owner of the cabbage cart knelt to the floor defeated, crying how it always seemed to happen to his cabbages. But from the corner in a small shadow of light a person pulled out a cigarette and took a drag before turning to a person next to him. Is it him? Yeah, the person replied. That's most certainly alright with him alright. Meshi. Luffy exclaimed as he burst into the bar he had located from the source of food his nose had tracked. He just knew he had smelled apple pies here, and this was a great chance to get some. Unfortunately his backpack Kinda got stuck on the doorframe, which kept the attention that he had received when trying to run through. It was pretty comical, as he couldn't get in, he did a final push, and the wall broke around his backpack letting him in. Got it, he said with a grin, as he walked over to the bartender and sat down, repeating the words meshi meshi to the bartender, as he smiled. Hey you, who the hell do you think you are sitting up there? A man's voice called out from Luffy's left, who was ignoring him, not that he meant to, he just didn't realize it. Food was an important asset that required all attention, as far as Luffy was concerned. So the man was put off, as he was ignored, and pondered on what to do. Ignoring someone that called out like that could be a sign of either cowardice or confidence, and he didn't know which one it was. So he just continued, as he really had no other choice because if he didn't, his boss would do worse to him if he let something like this slide. Hey you, I'm talking to you black coat. Don't you see the captain of the Stargazer Pirates is right here, worth 130 million Beely? He yelled walking over to Luffy. Huh? Luffy turned his head to look at who was talking to him. As soon as the Beely popped up his attention immediately thought I could pay for the food like that, and proceeded to look at who this captain was. Looking over at the person in the corner who was laughing, no doubt at this new fool's death wish, was a decent sized man. He wore a blue captain top, buttoned up with his arms through the sleeves, and white pants, black boots. He also wore a bandana which was blue with white dots on it in the formation of a star. His face was pretty straight to say the least, pretty normal, with a goatee for facial hair, and a small scar on his left cheek that appeared to be from a sword. Hey you. Luffy called out to the captain completely ignoring the other man that had walked up to him in the first place, receiving a sweet drop from everyone in the bar. Trying to beg for forgiveness. Ha, that wouldn't work. You're now in debt to the Stargazer Pirates kid, and you better pay up before things get ugly. The captain said. Debt? What kind of debt? Luffy asked, confused. For walking in on my turf, causing a racket, and causing problems see. Now you're gonna owe 10 mil to walk out of here with a strip of your life, or we can just take it from you, so what's it gonna be? The easy way or the hard way? The captain asked, laughing his way through it, bloodlust clearly in his eyes. I don't have any money. Luffy said blankly. Again receiving sweat drops from those in the bar. Then we'll have to think of some way to get some money out of you then huh? The captain said, as he got up and started to walk over to Luffy. Hey you look like a pirate too, how much are you worth? Maybe that will be a way to get some money out of you. He asked to get closer, starting to take in a good look of Luffy. I'm not sure, I have been away for a while. It might not be the same as it was. Luffy replied. Well then who are you? I've seen the latest listings. The captain said, as he started to realize who this man looked like. Mugiwara he stuttered slightly, hesitating in his voice. Hi. Luffy replied confused. Huh. The captain let out, as he stiffened up looking at Luffy, and the life drained right out of him. All of his speech that he had ready was now gone, and his brain went into overdrive to not make this man mad. Listen hey, Mugiwara, we meant no disrespect. Is there anything I can do for you buddy? The captain asked, again plain hesitation, although invisible to the clueless Luffy. Boss, what are you say you've the first man said, as he was grabbed and jabbed in the ribs. Shush up, and look at this. The captain whispered to him, and handed the man a piece of paper. It was a wanted poster, a bounty for the Straw Hat Captain, Monkey D. Luffy, 400 million Beely. The man stiffened up instantly becoming white, as a ghost, all color leaving his body. Is there something wrong? Luffy asked. No, there's nothing wrong, good old buddy. But hey, is there anything you need? Wouldn't want to be unkind to a guest of course right? The captain motioned to the bartender, as he quickly looked at Luffy if he needed anything. Meshi? Luffy said simply, as the bartender worked into overdrive pulling food out of literally nowhere, putting it on the table, as it was ingested by Luffy. Faster than the eye could see, the plates grew in numbers, and were being stacked pretty high. Yet again, sweat drops could be seen from those in the bar. Phew, the captain said going back to his spot in the bar, followed by the other man that had initiated the conversation with Luffy. Yet was ignored throughout seemingly the entire incident. Boy? Luffy said. Huh? The captain asked, clearly nervous, that Luffy might need more than just food. Maybe the rumors were true. Thanks for the food. Luffy said, as he picked up his large backpack, and left the building causing the wood near the doorframe to get pushed out even more than it already was. Inside the bar just as Luffy left, voices could be heard mumbling about fake rumors that they have heard. I thought he was recruiting, and used a pistol. The captain of the Stargazer Pirates said. Yeah, and he was a lot bigger, and that sword he wore was all torn up, wasn't it? At least that's what they said. I haven't seen him up until now. A pirate with a purple bandana said. It's possibly just more lies like the others, but whatever, he's gone now, the captain announced. Narrator. Luffy was walking towards Grove 13. He had landed in a grove that was next to the middle landing area. The group of 1 to 29 groves. He was near the 10s at the moment, on Grove 11. He had to walk only a little more, and he was just looking around at everything, taking in the view around him. After all those years, he could still remember that defeat they had against the warlord. He wouldn't let that happen again. Now he had the power to stop that, and plus more. As Luffy was walking, he noticed a person of a rather round nature pull out a gun and aim it at a girl when a man stepped in front of her, begging that he not shoot, asking why he was doing this. Luffy was now interested in what was going on and stopped in his tracks to watch. Look here, you two look just like the guys that came in and were causing trouble before, so now you gotta pay the price. Don't you know who the hell I am? I'm Monkey D. Luffy. I'll be the king of the sea. The fat man roared out and pulled the trigger. In the split second of the shot, the couple put their hands over their head and thought their life was over, everything lost. But in the blink of an eye, the bullet never reached its target. It was caught by a hand. A rubber hand. The fat man just started to laugh until he realized that the bullet did not make contact with his target. There was no blood, but he could see his bullet. That wasn't right. Wait, no, the bullet was in a hand. You caught the bullet. The fat man roared out. Just who the hell do you think you are? The man yelled enraged, but as the last of his sentence slipped off his tongue, he was punched in the gut and shot through the air towards a building, decimating it with his body as he impacted, causing the wood to split and crash, and the roof caved in and fell on him. Luffy, the one who had stopped the bullet, had a rough and hard look on his face. He was staring straight at the fat guy who had claimed he was Luffy. Although that was not what had upset Luffy. Boy, there's only room for one pirate king, and that's not you, it's me. Luffy yelled towards the other man, causing the people in the crowd to gasp and whisper amongst themselves. Doesn't he know who that is? That's Monkey D. Luffy, the guy who broke into NG's lobby. He was at Marineford. Doesn't that man value his life? The fat man got up out of the debris that piled atop his body and walked towards Luffy, angered by the fact this guy punched him so hard. He had already realized this guy was no joke. He was pretty tough. Hopefully he could scare him off being Luffy, though he should say he isn't going to be the pirate king again. Hey, listen buddy, I'll drop being the pirate king, but if you attempt to attack me again, I'm gonna have to roast you. The man shouted at Luffy, hoping to get a reaction that turned in his favor. Unfortunately, he wasn't too lucky. Boy, you stole my name, Luffy said calmly. Huh? The man said, confused, and started to take a closer look at the man in front of him, taking in the straw hat atop his head, and just as before for the Stargazer pirates, everything clicked. The person in front of him was the real Luffy. The real Luffy. He coughed out surprise and turned around to hightail it out of there, only to be grabbed by Luffy and pulled towards him. Luffy looked him right in the eyes and asked, "You're coming with me, whether you like it or not," and walked in the direction he was going, stopping 5 steps out to turn and see if he was following or not. He wasn't well until Luffy looked. Once he did, he snapped into pace and followed obediently. The fat man had 2 people with him, who had just sat there bewildered throughout the entire event. However, Luffy seemed to have not noticed their affiliation with the man, and continued onward anyways with the fake Luffy behind him. Oi, we gotta go get the others, this could be bad. They are gonna start gathering in the plains soon, and we'll need him there. A man with green hair thrown up into an afro of sorts, but smooth hanging off the front of his face, defying gravity somehow. Yeah, we better hurry too, a semi-chubby girl with orange hair replied, as they both took off in the opposite direction that Luffy and Fake were going. Luffy had been walking with the Fake for a while now, and they could see Shaki's bar just up ahead in the distance. Boy, don't cause any problems, or I'll have to kill you, Luffy said with a smile that meant he was serious, but it didn't change the fact he had just joyfully threatened someone's life. Right, got it. The fat guy let out, stiffening up slightly. After that quick conversation, they went on moving towards Shaki's. It wasn't that far away, but even though they could see it, it would probably take about 2 to 4 minutes to walk there. Currently they were on a large hill on one of the groves. And down the hill, there was a bridge that crossed to the other side, and Shaki's bar wasn't too far from the edge of that bridge. Luffy knew he may or may not run into bandits or hunters, as they were going to enter the lawless area. But either way, he knew he could take them. Plus they were very close to his destination anyways. It was seriously doubtful that he would run into anything that involved a fight. 6 minutes later. Knock knock, oi, anyone home? Luffy called out as he knocked on the door. He waited for a reply, but received nothing, so he went to knock again, only for the door to be opened by a girl who looked pretty much like a loli. She had pink hair which was quite long, that fell past her shoulders and near her lower back. She wore a frilly black dress that reached her feet, a small white watch on her wrist, and a black hat with white roses around the hem, and a red underside. She was also carrying an umbrella, and what seemed to be a bleeding teddy bear. Another noticeable feature she has was the pink tattoo on her left arm and the marking of a bird. Ha, there. Who are you? Luffy asked, confused, as he wasn't expecting this person, although she was kind of familiar. I am the marvelous Perona, she exclaimed, doing a pose for him. Who? Luffy asked simply. Perona gasped, he does not remember me. She cried out, flying back into the bar into a corner of the room inside, and mumbled softly about being forgotten. Boy, Luffy. How's it going, you're number 7. A man's voice called out to him. Oh, Zoro. Luffy replied with a wide grin. Good to see you, Luffy said. Boy Luffy, look around the room, there's a couple of us here too, don't forget about us. Another voice called out, taking a drag from his cigarette, smiling as he did so. Sanji. Luffy let out, keeping his grin intact, if anything it got bigger. Oi, don't forget about the master craftsman over here. A huge smile plastered on yet another man of the group. Usopp. And the best navigator there is. A woman's voice called out. Nami. Another excited yell filled the room from Luffy. Hey Luffy. The calm woman's voice also popped up. Robin. Luffy called out her name as he looked at her. Zoro, Sanji, Robin, Nami, Usopp. Luffy counted out on his fingers. Where's Brook, Chopper, and Frankie? Luffy asked. Brook is here, and Frankie is attending to the ship, you just missed him. The Chopper went with Frankie to check something on the ship. Oh okay. Luffy said, as he walked over to Zoro and sat next to him. So we're finally all here, huh? Luffy said, much to himself, as he looked up at the ceiling. I guess this is where it all starts. So here he was, the outsider, pretty much forgotten at this point. His presence outside of the door had completely shown that nobody even cared that he was there. He wondered for a moment if Luffy had forgotten about him, or didn't care enough to mention him. Maybe he could make a run for it, although he seriously doubted it. He had faked being Luffy and the other members of the Straw Hat Pirates. And here they were, alive, and well right in front of him. The real deal, the real ones with all the strength plus more, as they haven't been seen for the 2 years they have been away. A sudden voice echoed throughout fake Luffy's mind, as his presence was called out. Jinxed himself. Boy Luffy, he's the guy over there. And why does he look like you, but just fat? Zoro asked. Yeah, I was going to ask that as well, you keep meeting weird people Luffy, a fan. Sanji. I fake Luffy stuttered, only to be interrupted by Luffy. No, I found him out somewhere using my name, so I brought him along. Luffy replied simply. But I highly doubt it extends only so far, he must have used my name for something else. Luffy observed, looking up to hear an old but familiar voice assure his suspicions. If it isn't Minky D. Luffy, and you're correct, he's been gathering a pirate army out in the Grove 3. He is using the alias of your name since it's a big name. I'm also a fan. Shaki said, coming from a door on the far end of the room, with stairs hidden from the shadow making it barely visible as she closed the door. Shaki. Luffy said, smiling to her. Fake Luffy grumbled, looking for an excuse. Everyone, follow me. And don't dare run fast. Luffy said, getting up and walking towards the front door in which he had just come, pushing the fake Luffy slightly since he did not move as he went. The others in the room all followed suit and obeyed without a word, and some even pushed the fake Luffy as they walked through for fun. Namely Zoro and Sanji. Everyone lined up. Except Shaki, and Luffy said. Why are we doing this? Usopp asked, as they all lined up. You will see. Captain's orders. Luffy replied. As Luffy said that, he squatted and sat in the grass and crossed his legs and put his hands into sort of a way of meditation. After about 30 seconds Luffy opened his eyes and stood up. Zoro, Sanji stepped forward. You two and I are going to spar for a moment, Luffy said, as he walked towards the middle of the open area they were currently in. Shaki's bar was conveniently right next to an open area of grass, perfect for this kind of situation, or whatever was developing within Luffy's mind. I don't need Curly Brow's help, Zoro complained. And I don't need Moss Head's help. Sanji barked his complaint at Zoro. If you lose less than 50% of this workout, both of you have to dress up as a girl for a whole day. You may both fight independently if you want, but will only advise you once to use your teamwork. That's not an order. Both Zoro and Sanji grumbled to themselves. Fine, but what do you mean by 50%? Sanji asked. You're great on this, which I will dictate by how you do, Luffy said simply. Usopp. Luffy called out. Yes Luffy, Usopp replied. Do you have something that can explode in the sky? Luffy asked. Yeah, this fireworks star will blow your mind, Usopp said excitedly. On its explosion we start, attack me with your complete bloodlust. Every aspect will be viewed, Luffy said. At this point, everyone around Luffy saved for, and were thinking about how Luffy was different. No one had said anything about it yet, but everyone knew that the others were thinking about it. He seemed smarter for some reason. He had never set up an exercise before. Although it had been 2 years, which was a long time. Go Usopp, Luffy said, receiving a yell from Usopp, special attack rocket star. And with that a firework of green and blue shot into the sky. It was small. Too small to be a huge explosion, is what everyone thought. But, as it reached a decent height it expanded and exploded into a green and blue explosion of color. As soon as it exploded, Zoro took off running towards Luffy, getting low and drawing Shusui and cutting an upward strike, clearly cutting Luffy in half, at which the others all gasped at the seemingly death of Luffy through a spar. Zoro was not fooled and blocked the attack that came from behind, barely making it in time, as Luffy pulled his hand back, as he had not induced that punch. He would have been cut if he had not pulled back. Although he didn't think he would need Kaki at this point. Luffy, you're not in gear second, but you're fast, Zoro asked casually. HMPH. Luffy stifled a laugh and smiled at him. Setsu. Luffy said, barely audible to anyone, and disappeared, coming into vision just in front of Zoro with his feet in the air. Zoro thought, here's my chance. He can't move, has going to land 3 feet that way, and he wouldn't be able to move, as he sliced Shusui where he thought Luffy would land, only for Luffy to disappear again, and be behind him this time, and land a direct hit on his back with a normal pistol. Zoro cried out, being pushed really fast, his boots sliding across the ground, and doing a front flip across the ground, and running up a tree, due to the momentous momentum that he had received after a single punch, and landed a backflip from the tree, and turned to face Luffy. He's fast, and that was a single punch, a pistol. I better watch out, if he hits me with anything deadly, it's gonna hurt. Zoro thought, cracking a smile, this is gonna be fun. Boy, don't leave me out of this just yet. A voice called out, kicking at where Luffy previously was, only for him to disappear yet again right in front of his eyes, having to show everyone his new move to avoid being his just, as Zoro was. Moonwalk. Sanji yelled, and flew away just in time for Luffy's pistol to miss, and retract, a lot faster than his normal. It seemed that he wasn't in gear second, yet his punch was twice as fast, with almost the same damage. Teamwork. Luffy called out happily, as he dodged a 100-pound cannon from Zoro, and dodged a swift kick from Sanji. Hayaku, what kaiju, Rakuju Luffy let out to taunt both of them. 100, 80, 60. I wonder how you both would look in a blue or pink dress. Luffy pondered loud enough for both Sanji and Zoro to hear it, and took off trying to get at least a hit in, but missing each shot. Luffy landed on the ground, after an aerial battle with Sanji, only to be attacked with slash after slash from Zoro. Luffy had yet to use Haki-induced hits to block, and simply dodged for now. He only needed Haki to avoid getting cut. If it was a blunt hit, such as Sanji's hits, then no Haki was needed. Even knowing this, he still dodged both Zoro and Sanji's attacks. Oi, you don't want to play dress up with Nami and Robin, right? Luffy said, taunting Zoro. Just wait, you rubberhead. Zoro grit his teeth. There was no way he would dress up as a girl. Just as Zoro said that, Sanji came out of nowhere inches from landing a mace kick from Sanji. Luffy was forced to use Setsu that time. For the most part, Luffy didn't have to use any techniques he had, only using his movement abilities for now. Aside from his pistol. Offense, check. Luffy said, getting confusion from Sanji and Zoro as they looked at each other. Luffy disappeared again, probably using Setsu, and flew high into the air, just kind of hovering there, and called out his technique. Gum no pistol. Luffy yelled, shooting 30 pistol shots in about half of a second, leaving no time to dodge or block. Sanji and Zoro were forced to take 15 hits each, and we pushed them into the ground. As soon as it was done, Luffy jumped back down, and looked at Zoro, and Sanji getting up, still ready to fight. No, pose a shot, pal. Luffy yelled out, instantly disappearing from everyone's sight, but was now visible, but a lot of him, running through the air. Zoro and Sanji could see multiple Luffys running past them at high speeds, and shot out punches. As he ran past them, Zoro and Sanji were not adapted to Luffy's speed yet, and only managed to block about 10 to 15 hits each, but this one Luffy had shot about 100 until he slowed down, and landed 15 meters away from each of them, just standing there trying to withstand the pain. Zoro muttered, coughing a little blood up, followed by Sanji. As both of them fell toward the floor, losing the will to fight after so many high-level attacks, Luffy caught both of them in his arms, and disappeared only to be visible again near the others. They will be fine, they were all blunt force hits, but when Chopper gets back he's going to need to take a look at them, Luffy said, looking around the area they were in. Luffy, how could you do that? You could have seriously injured them. Nami yelled, trying to grab Luffy by his ear, only for him to sidestep it, and point towards the trees. There were about 20 bounty hunters hiding in the bushes, barely visible if you didn't already know they were there, so when everyone looked over they could see them hiding very poorly. Usopp, Nami. Luffy said, getting the attention of both of them. There's your test. Luffy said, administering a few bandages to Zoro, while Shaki helped by putting the others on Sanji, who already had a smile on his face. An angel is here to save me from the depths of pain. Sanji cried out. Boy Luffy, you want us to handle them? Usopp asked nervously. Yeah, you two should be more than enough. And I promise you won't get hurt. I'll be making sure. Luffy replied, getting an exasperated sigh of relief from Usopp. Hey, don't be ordering us around like that, Luffy. Nami yelled out in frustration, obviously not ready to be taking orders just like that. I'm the captain, what I say goes. When we are in war or on the battlefield, my word will be taken without hesitation. Is that clear from all of you? Luffy asked with a serious face. What he received was distant looks, but everyone agreed with the fact that he was their captain. Whatever he had done in the past, being goofy and stupid, may have had an impact, but so did this new way Luffy was acting. Although they would soon see Luffy hadn't changed all that much. Boy, Nami, get ready. I'm going to use a smoke screen. Do you have any attacks? Usopp asked Nami before they entered. Yes, just leave the rest to me. Nami said with a bright smile. Let's go, Sasabutchi Smoke Star. Usopp yelled, shooting a fast shot into the middle of the bounty hunters that had jumped down, and ran towards them during their conversation. Suddenly a huge plume of smoke rose up, and blocked all sights of the people inside, but that didn't matter for what Nami had in store for them. Thunderball, lightning strike. Nami yelled, as a huge lightning strike fell upon the plume of smoke. Just as the smoke started to dissipate, one of the stronger bounty hunters that survived that hit ran towards the group and threw a throwing knife straight at Usopp, who flinched and hesitated and looked up only to see it was caught between the fingers of Luffy. It then threw it back at the man who threw it for it to impact into the man's left leg, and he fell into the ground and stopped completely. "Oh, wah." Usopp stuttered, as he saw Luffy pretty much save him from the knife. "Thanks, Luffy." Usopp stuttered out a thanks. "Boy, what's your name?" Luffy called out to the hunter who had come for them. "I ain't telling you shit." The hunter spit, as he put pressure against his foot and looked around in a now squatting position. "Boy," Luffy said, as the hunter looked up to see Luffy's face. What he saw was that of a demon. Luffy's presence to this man was that of utter terror. "I'm gonna ask you once more, who are you?" Luffy stated simply. "I am with Twin Fangs." The hunter fell on his ass and scrambled backwards in an attempt to further himself from Luffy. The others watched from a distance looking at Luffy, as his presence was deterred with a seemingly glowing red ore. The air around him was also darkened for some odd reason. Bakemono. The other hunters that had been hit from Nami's attack scrambled away and ran fast. Fortunately, Luffy had no interest in them and let them go. Luffy reached down and picked up the hunter near him and put him on his feet. "Oi, you tell your boss, don't try that again, or there won't be any more people for them to send once I'm done," Luffy said in a deep dark voice, and dropped the man from his grip. The man fell to the ground the instant he was out of Luffy's grip and crawled away and was able to get on his feet and make a staggered speed walk away from the area. At that point, Luffy had dropped his dark demeanor and turned to face the others. "I think we should all go back inside and wait for the others," Luffy said, and headed back to the house, stopping by Sanji and Zoro to carry them to Shaki's bar. "Did you see that?" Usopp asked Nami. "I know. Luffy has really grown, hasn't he?" Nami said with a smile. "I will follow him no matter what he's like." Robin commented, thinking back on how Luffy had saved her, even when she had wanted to die, and then back in Ernie's lobby. She would follow this man until her death. Although she was able to make it seem like a simple compliment without as much depth on the outside to her fellow Nakama. "Same here," Usopp exclaimed, as he skipped into a jog up to the House of Swords. While Shaki's bar with the rest of them following him, including the fat guy, he still felt very out of place, as if yet again he was forgotten. "So is waiting that bad?" Probably not, but when you have to wait for your allies to recover without your medic on hand, for the injuries that you yourself had given your team, isn't that easy to just sit and watch. Although a certain group of pirates were faring a lot better than anyone else would have with this type of situation. Probably due to the fact that this group wasn't particularly injured, just rather shocked and kin to sore. Zoro and Sanji both were very strong, although they were not in Luffy's somehow even stronger league he had joined over the 2 years they had been away. But within that time, both of them had gotten stronger to beat the opponents later on, that would surface with a power even greater. Nonetheless, both of them were fine, but still required Chopper to check them out, just for safety measures, and by safety measures, some pain medicine. It wasn't something to say that these two were not battle ready, they had been through worse, and just a couple of fast punches into the ribs were not enough to stop them. Proving their worth when Luffy had picked them up heading to Shaki's bar, they had stopped him, and walked the rest on their own. They had gotten over their initial shock of their rubber captain, mopping the floor with them, with his lowest level techniques no less. So, as it seems, we had said before. But they are waiting, and it has been quite a while too. About 1 hour since their spar, and the bounty hunter altercation, until a sudden knock on the door piped every single had to look over in that direction, and see what all of the commotion was about, hoping that they could get some action, or another team member to spring in, and end the endless boredom that had encased the room for some odd reason. "Boy, I'm coming," Luffy let out, getting up and walking towards the door. Luffy stood directly in front of the door, as he moved his hand towards the door handle, wondering who would be on the other side. As a side note of Luffy's power, observation haki was pretty much active all the time, and made his senses of presence a lot better, although no matter who you were, there was no such thing as knowing what the presence was. Although there were 3 levels of presence, but by good intention, although this is not necessarily the case. It is the same as neutral, but with the color of blue, when perception eyes are activated. Neutral and neutral gray color encases the person when P is activated, although being neutral, it has an added effect of being harder to detect. Evil by evil, it means by either bloodlust or intent to kill, making them a red or dark crimson shade of color based on the intensity. "Mushy mushy," Luffy said, as he grinned widely, and opened the door only to face a beautiful young woman, with deep dark black hair, with 2 waves of hair going in opposite directions for bangs, and her hair was long in the back, reaching all the way to her hips. Her height was the same as Luffy, without a head. She had soft, milky white skin, although it would not be called pale, but had a tone of baby skin to it. She wore clothing that closely resembled Zoro's, although her clothing was all pink, and some things were a bit different than Zoro's. For one, she had no pants, but rather leggings, which were black, with pink shoes. Very color coordinated if Smart Elephant does say so himself. To top it all off, she had a black and pink engraved sword sheath on her left hip, indicating she was a right-hand user, the color of the blade unknown. "Dad?" Luffy asked with a confused look on his face, as their eyes met. Luffy instantly could see she was a neutral, but was still unsure of who the hell this person was, and why was she here. Monkey D. Luffy. The girl suddenly cried out, with a serious deep look on her face, as her right hand flew to her blade's handle, only to be stopped by Luffy's strong grip, grabbing her hand, and holding it placed on her sword's handle. "Boy, don't do that," Luffy said calmly, only to be kicked at by the smaller female, although having pretty much no effect on Luffy. "You will help me or you will die," the younger female cried out, and thrashed about trying to loosen Luffy's grip on her hand. "Huh?" Luffy asked, and let go of her arm. The instant he did so, she jumped back about 3 feet, and got in a position that said, "I'm about to rip your head." It was a sword stance that was low, with her hand on her sword's handle, and she leaned forward ready to get a fast strike from a forward position. "With what?" Luffy asked, not getting a response for a good 20 seconds. Thinking she wasn't going to cooperate, she spoke up. "You have to save her, you just have to." The girl. "Save you?" Luffy asked again, still not sure with who he was talking to. "And what's your name?" "I'm Miku, and I'm the sister of Jewelry Bonnie. And you're going to take me to Impel Down." Miku yelled out with a red face that was flustered, completely forgetting that she probably should have said that in the first place before attacking him, thinking he had already rejected. "Dad? Impel Down?" Luffy asked, confused. "That's right, Impel Down. Now we're going now, and you will help me because you're strong." Miku yelled, giving her the look of a child having a tantrum, which she currently was having. "Oi oi, Luffy, didn't you break into Impel Down before 2 air? Well, I mean, hey, what about the sky today? I think I got a new sickness. It's called can't breathe." Yusuf said, gargling at the end, shimming his way away from the others, likely to hide himself and away from Luffy. His facial expression had changed from happy to a soft, sad expression. "It's fine, now who are you again?" Luffy said to Yusuf, calming him, and asking Miku his question. As soon as Luffy said this, everyone in the room fell right on their comical faces, and sweat dropped. "His true colors," Zoro called out, almost opening his left eye. "There it is," Yusuf cried. The rest just stifled their laughter, while a very nervous Miku looked onward at this weird display of stupidity and randomness before her. "I am Miku Bonnie, and you will take me to Impel Down, Monkey D. Luffy," Miku yelled, stopping everyone to look at Luffy for what he was going to do. "Boy, are you serious?" Luffy asked, a dead serious look on his face. "Yes, of course I am. Now are you going to help me or WH?" Miku started only to be hit with a full force punch, with the low mutter of a pistol. Miku's memories passed before her fast. She was passing through the air at a fast speed, but it was as if time had stopped just for her, and only for it to bring up these sad memories of joyful times that were never to happen again. They were memories of Miku and Jewelry, when Miku was younger, and when Jewelry left to become a pirate. She had always sent money back to Miku to help her out, and when Miku was old enough, she also set out to become a pirate. Unfortunately, the sisters had lost contact 6 months beforehand, with no more letters or money coming in. Not that Miku had needed it though. And at that point, Miku snapped her eyes open, removing herself from her daydream, and flipping wildly in the air, landing on her feet just barely on a large tree, and planting marks where her feet were from the force. She jumped off with a front flip, and landed. She looked up to see Luffy standing in front of her, about 15 meters away from her. "What the hell are you doing?" Miku shouted angrily. Everyone from inside had seen Miku just fly straight out of the doorway, and Luffy leaped out of the house, proving the point of it being his cause of what had happened. Everyone rushed outside to see what was going on, and watched on, as Luffy stood facing Miku. "Setsu." Luffy mumbled, barely audible. All of a sudden Luffy was gone, until Miku realized his presence. Luffy was running all around her, flying through the air at high speeds, multiple Luffys seen due to her incapability to keep up with his speed. Miku had Kaki, but unfortunately for her, even if Luffy was readable, the speed was too much to even stop it. Although it would be better to be prepared with being able to read your opponent, she couldn't even do that. So she decided to upgrade her arsenal for this fight. She would need it. Her full power probably wouldn't be able to match him at full strength, but hopefully she could be at equal terms for a little to get an advantage during that time. "Martha Roar. Sheath the power within my soul," Miku yelled, pulling out her sword from her sheath. The blade itself was completely black, but had some glowing effect to it somehow. It was black for a moment, but would flicker every couple seconds with pink engravings on the flat of the blade. Miku sheathed her sword, and pulled it out again, but this time a huge explosion of pink-black mist exploded, pulling at the dirt on the ground, whipping it slightly. With a pillar of light going into the sky, it lasted for about 3 to 5 seconds before it died down, and Miku became completely visual. She now had black and pink body armor, made from some sort of steel it seemed, and looked strong, and also had the same pulsating engravings on it. The sword had become longer, with an edge at the end of it curving, along with a line of silver along the edge of the blade, which looked completely sharp. Cutting butter would be nothing, and cutting someone would be child's play it seemed with this sword. "Sacred set, Martha, unleash." Miku yelled out, causing a rush of haki to fly out onto everyone in the vicinity. Although it did not have a big range, it was quite strong for a person that seemed to have used everything to use this armor power thingy. The king's disposition that Miku exhibited was enough to knock out Nami and Robin, both being caught by Zoro, who laid them down gently. Although everyone was okay, it was less than a disposition of just shock. They were completely stupefied. Before Robin was knocked out, she had managed to say Martha, Sekard said, with a shocked look on her face, as the haki had hit her. Hashoku haki, Luffy said, slightly shocked, while he continued to run through the air, and stopped, jumping down to the ground, and just looked at Miku. Ha, did I scare you, big boy? Miku said, trying to mock him, but stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the look on his face. It wasn't that he had fear, nor was he scared. Luffy had let his minced slip to allow the haki user to see what he had to offer. Luffy exhilarated pure nothing. But what really got to her was when he smiled and said, "Oi, I'm not going to go easy anymore. Say pink rose when you forfeit," Luffy said easily. Miku looked on with a slight fear, as Luffy started to let out his color intent, showing her a portion of his power, an intimidation trick he had learned from the old man, but Luffy didn't use enough to make her faint or go unconscious. This trick was rare because those even without the Hashoku haki could use it as well, although it took an immense willpower and strength in general. Not only that, but it drained you of your reserve strength. Luffy had just finished using his Kai intimidation technique, and to be honest, it drained him. The technique was a very exhausting thing to use, and should really only be used before battle started, or to use on a huge crowd of overwhelming force. But nope, that's not how our buddy Luffy does it. He does it for reasons unknown. Cause that's good, right? Luffy leaped forward, and gave a hard punch on Miku's right cheek, sending her flying back into the massive tree. Upon impact, a huge dent with splintering wood everywhere, Miku fell to the floor in a heap of inability to dodge or move. "Oi, I hope you remember the word," Luffy said, walking closer. "Cough, don't think you COUGH stop me," Miku yelled in an outrage at his words. "Then let's end this," Luffy said calmly, and stopped just a foot away from Miku's lifeless body still laid upon the floor. Luffy reached down, and Miku's body twitched in fear, but there was nothing that Miku could do. Her entire body was shut down. Everything was turning black in her vision, black and blurry. That was all that was left. Was this how she was going to die? She thought to herself of these two things, black and blurry. These would be the last thoughts she ever had. Of death and life, but all of a sudden, Miku felt her body being lifted up, and could feel that she was in the position of being carried by someone. What was he going to do to her? Miku protested by moving her body, and thrashing about, well trying to at least. The most she was able to do was squeak, and move her arms weakly. She was being carried like a sack of potatoes over Luffy's right shoulder, but Luffy stopped walking when she started her tantrum or protest. "Oi, don't worry, I forfeited," Luffy said, "you win." Luffy said in a calming voice, and continued in his direction, back to Shaki's bar. "Setsu," Luffy muttered, flashing back the rest of the way. 5 minutes later, everyone was sitting down again, lounging around in the room they were in the first place before all this Miku and prison business had started. No one had anything to say when Luffy had jumped back with Miku across his shoulder. Luffy told Sanji and Zoro to help out Nami and Robin, while he carried a now unconscious Miku with him back to the bar, along the way talking to Shaki about some boards and paper. And this was where it had brought us at this point, with a Luffy sitting in front of everyone, with a large parchment paper in front of them, but was currently rolled up, hiding its contents. "What's in the sheet?" Usopp asked, receiving nods from everyone else. "A plan," Luffy said. "Oh?" Zoro said. "When did you become a strategist?" he said, smiling a one-eyed smile. "Not sure. Anyways, as you all know, we have a 9-man crew, which consists of me, Zoro, Sanji, Robin, Nami, Brook, Usopp, Chopper, and Frankie," Luffy said, unrolling the parchment to reveal a tree of command. "Captain Monkey D. Luffy. First Mate Urano Zoro. Second Mate Sanji. Quartersmith Usopp. Navigator Nami. Shipwright Frankie. Dr. Chopper. Archaeologist Robin. Musician Brook. As you can see, I put a line between you two and the rest. This is because they are officers of the ship. To get past in the new world is one of territory and armies. For now having it this way is fine, but I will be adjusting it later," Luffy explained. The others were put into a secondary category, jobs. Their job does not define their rank, but what they do for the crew. The reason we require it is this way. Later on it will all make sense. For now though we'll just have to go with it. Luffy finished, looking around, and rolling the parchment back up. "So basically I'm better than a swirly brow?" Zoro asked. "Basically," Luffy said. "In battle, the shots fall from the line," Luffy continued. "Oi, I am not taking orders from moss heads." Sanji erupted, and everything started to click. Clicky. "Chain of command is what we will now follow. That's an order from the captain," Luffy said calmly, looking at Sanji eye to eye. "Right, well we're gonna have a lot of work in there, so we'll just leave it to your judgment, Luffy," Sanji said, looking at Luffy with respect. He had grown, and had earned it from the blonde. "Also, there's another thing. Here's our course of action we're going to take," Luffy said, pulling out another parchment a little larger than the first. As soon as Luffy had unscrawled this parchment, everyone who was looking at it looked on with bewilderment, shock, and amazement. For one thing, it was the worst drawing you had ever seen, but it was funny for some odd reason. But then again, this was supposed to be serious. "Luffy, are you sure about this?" Zoro asked, looking Luffy straight in the eyes. "Has your resolve become strong enough to lead without hesitation?" "Yes," Luffy replied, a serious look on his face. "I'll follow you to the ends of the sea, and make you the pirate king. This is nothing compared to that, Luffy." Zoro started relaxing in his seat, content with what he had said. He knew that Luffy already knew that he would follow him no matter what. What can he say? Luffy had earned a loyal crew through what he had done, but saying it to him after these 2 years resolved his confidence in his captain. "Ha, this seems like it will be fun. We can show our power for this," Sanji commented, relaxing just as Zoro did. "Boy, you're not serious, are you?" Fake fat Luffy said. "This is insane." He yelled and ran for the door only to be blocked by Luffy. "Boy, don't move and sit still. I'm not finished with you yet," Luffy said easily and went back to the parchments. On the piece of paper, it was a detailed plan about one major thing. Singing to Impel Down. Luffy had drawn out an entire plan of action for leaving the archipelago and sailing to Impel Down. It started with a diversion of taking down the massive tree next to the Navy's main base on the Pelago. Then taking the ship coated with bubble orgasm juice to take it under the walls of the Impel Down, just like they did at the Battle of the Best. To say the least, it was a seemingly impossible task to take down the tree, but Luffy looked as though he could do it on his own. "Are we all set?" Luffy asked. "Yes," the rest replied. Well, those who were conscious, but suddenly the 2 previously sleeping beauties awoke to the conclusion. "Wait, what's all set?" Nami said, getting up, grabbing the sides of the table they were near for support. "I'd also like to know, Captain Sen," Robin said, getting up without the support of the table. "Here are the plans, but for now I have to go do something. Zoro, Sanji, come with me. The rest of you wait here, we'll be back soon, so don't worry too much." "Sanji, you know where the Sunny is, right?" Luffy asked. "Yeah, no use for the first to take us there." Sanji snickered. "Boy, I can take you there," Zoro said. "Remember how you got stuck on a straight path?" Sanji busted up laughing. "Boy, curly fry, I'm gonna cook you up myself and put you on a straight path to Cook Central." Zoro let out, having a little mental grind between one another, where they stare at each other and there's static between their eyes. Ikezu. Ikezo means let's go, Luffy said, walking out the door, followed by Sanji and Zoro, who looked away from each other, obviously trying to prove who was least interested in the other. -40 minutes later. "There Sunny is," Luffy said with a soft smile on his face, remembering his ship, his Nakama. Then he grimaced at what was to happen, but thought better of it. It would be the same. "Boy, Frankie," Luffy yelled, jumping up to the deck of Sunny. "Super, Luffy," Frankie let out, coming from the kitchen door. "Boy Frankie, there's not much time right now. There's something else I have to attend to, but there's a couple things I have to tell you," Luffy said, continuing to explain the situation about Impel Down. After explanation. "Okay, I get it. Sounds like a super plan for Luffy," Frankie replied. "There's one other thing," Luffy said. "What is it?" Frankie asked, with a confused look on his face. "Is there any way to make the Sunny bigger?" Luffy asked. "I've been waiting for this moment, Luffy," Frankie said excitedly. "What size?" "Hi, Galleon. I have a paper for you about the necessities. The rest is up to you. I'm sure since we have extra space you can put it to good use. I'm glad you're okay with this," Luffy said. "Well, to be honest, it won't be an easy process, Luffy. I'll have to disassemble Sunny." Frankie, pausing. "But Sunny's still with us. She'll still be the same. We're just giving her an upgrade," Frankie said happily, causing relief for both of them. "Here's the parchment you'll need. But we won't be doing it until we get back after Impel. Also catch up with Sanji and Zoro. I'm going to do something," Luffy said, handing him an extra scroll about the ranks. Luffy jumped away to the ground while Zoro and Sanji told Frankie about how Luffy had changed. Luffy had told everyone about how the old man told him things, how he got his new perspective on things, but still wanted the same goals. Luffy was the same for everything, except for the way he was going to do something from now on. Frankie was enthusiastic. Meanwhile with Luffy. Currently Luffy was looking at a tree, about a little away from the Sunny, mostly so they wouldn't see him doing this, not that it mattered, but just in case it backfired. Luffy put his left hand on the tree and focused hard and closed his eyes. Suddenly, the tree vibrated with red around his hand, and a sort of loud sound popped with a shockwave, and Luffy removed his hand to expose a clean huge hole in the middle of the tree. The tree wasn't too big, but it wasn't your average size either. It was more or less 5 feet thick, so no, not really normal. In any case, Luffy was testing out a new attack, an idea he had gotten from fighting Rob Lucci. Although it worked, Luffy wouldn't be using this on the giant grove tree. He would be doing something completely insane, with the drawbacks it had. But it would keep the Navy busy, and probably cost a lot to fix. Luffy was currently flying through the air at high speeds towards the Sunny. Why? Well, first off you have to remember that this is Luffy. No matter what has changed about him, you cannot change the fact that it's Luffy. So, as Luffy flies through the air, he smashes into both Zoro and Sanji flying off the Sunny, and into the water. Unfortunately for Luffy, his move had backfired, and didn't work at all. Now saying that it didn't work at all would be a lie. That tree was long gone, and was now probably blown super far away. What Luffy had done was mixed hockey with a technique that Rob Lucci had done. The Misugi powers or whatever. Luffy wasn't really good at remembering these things, but it was something that he had called it, and for some reason it seems that it was really hard to control. Now, we should actually take it back a step because Luffy had used a lot more power than Rob Lucci would have probably ever put into that attack. The attack was not meant to have so much power into it, so when Luffy did it with so much power, it knocked himself back hard, but the tree even harder. Now this would be a good idea if you had to get somewhere fast up, but probably also a good idea if you wanted to go head first into some huge boulders, and possibly give yourself a concussion. Right before Luffy hit Zoro and Sanji, in slow motion you could see Zoro's mouth open wide in shock, and motion to say what. And they were hit full force, flying into the ocean below. Luffy, what the hell? Zoro screamed, now swimming, holding Luffy up so he wouldn't drown. Cough, COUGHL Luffy, what the hell was that? Sanji said, coughing out seawater. Oyahuma Luffy said, starting to lose all of his power from being in the water. Oh geez, I shouldn't have expected any less from you Luffy, I was waiting for this to happen at least once today. Zoro said, smiling. Here, let's get out of this freaking water. Boy, what are you guys doing in the water? A voice called out from the shore. There was Frankly standing next to two figures. It was Nami and Robin. Our captain shot us into the water, Zoro said. Nami swan, Robin chuan. Sanji said out loud, swimming faster and dashing over to them. Would you need any help, my dear ladies in distress? No, we're fine, Nami said, pushing on the blonde's face away from her. Boy, it wasn't my fault, I was testing something out. Luffy said out loud, now on land, thanks to Zoro. Thanks Zoro. Yeah, no problem captain, Zoro replied. Suddenly, Robin started to blush a little bit at her captain's foolishness, and messed up, but then sported a crimson streak across her face, as she watched what her captain did next. He started to take off his wet coat, and ripped his shirt off, exposing his rock-hard, chiseled chest with a perfect six-pack, and his scar from the Battle of the Best. Yosh, Luffy said, discarding his shirt and coat into the ocean by throwing it hard. He turned to his crew that was assembled. We're going shopping, he said with a wide grin. Minus 45 minutes later, at the shopping center. After leaving Frankie alone to test out some stuff on the ship, and getting a note of what Frankie wanted, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Nami, and Robin set off to the shopping district, arriving to the bustling area with many new shops since the last time they had been here. There were a lot of street vendors selling useful items. That was when a man ran straight up to Luffy, and cheerfully looked up at him. Hey, you're the real Luffy. You beat up that bad guy who was out messing with everyone, he said. Here, if you don't mind, would you take this? The man then handed Luffy a ring, engraved on the inside. It said Pirate King. It was a gold ring with an aquat jewel in the middle, shaped with jagged lines around the entire ring. It was also engraved with diagonal lines throughout the entire ring on his face. Huh? What's this for? Luffy asked. It's me, you saved us. Me and my wife would have died if it was not for you coming to our aid. I know you may not have done it to save us, but I still wish for you to have it. The man said, holding it out with a joyful and confident smile clear on his face. Keep it and give it to your wife, Luffy said, starting to walk away. We both want you to have it, our hero. A lady's voice came, and she walked closer to the man who held the ring. We would appreciate it if you took it. You saved our lives. A ring that has at least some value is all we can offer. Please, take it, the woman said. Luffy looked at the couple, and eyed them for a few seconds before deciding to take it. He reached out, and took the ring, and put it on. He looked at them dead on with a serious look on his face, and switched it immediately into a smile, and told them I'll take it, but with it a promise. If you're ever in need, find me, and bring me this, Luffy said, breaking the ring in half, and he handed it back to them, and walked slowly away, the rest of his crew following him. The couple looked on at the man that had saved their life, and had also just offered them salvation, at the time never called for it, only leaving them with the idea of bringing half of a ring to him. For some reason they knew that even if they didn't have the half of the ring, that man would save them. Luffy's crew followed him, and looked on in amazement at how he had handled the situation. If Robin had respect for her captain, it may have doubled at this point. The man she loved was all that she had known, a person that cared for others before his own well-being. Robin was in a weird moment. She had never once been more embarrassed about anything in her entire life. The adrenaline that was being pumped into her system made her move lopsided, and fell over herself. She and the rest of the crew were inside of a clothing shop looking for new clothing. Now usually this wouldn't be something to be embarrassed about, but it was the fact that Luffy was going to be outside of that cloth to be seen. Now if the clothing wasn't revealing or anything right, wrong. Somehow, Nami had figured it out, and clicked it all together, and established an idea of how Robin really felt. So Nami had thought of a great idea when that captain mentioned they would be going to a clothing shop, and it would be on him. Nami had picked out one of the most revealing swimsuits she had ever seen. It was a purple bikini, but the cut was daring to say the least, and had a leg strap with the middle piece being purple, and white frilly fluff on the top, and bottom mostly for show, and eye candy. Robin tried to pull off the, I don't know what you're talking about thing, when Nami had confronted her about it, but lost to Nami's all-seeing eye, or something like that. You'll early have to wear something like this, Robin whispered to Nami with a flushed face. Yes, yes, Luffy's eyes will bulge out when he sees you like this, I guarantee it, Nami whispered excitedly. Okay, Robin said, looking down embarrassed at the frilly swimsuit in her hands. Meanwhile with the guys, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji. I'm telling you Luffy, she digs you, Zoro said. She digs for me? Luffy asked, oblivious of what Zoro just said. No baka, Zoro said with a completely confused look on his face, kinda like when Zoro does something like get lost on a straight trail, and everyone looks at him. It was now his turn to see what it looks like. I hate to agree with her, especially on something like that with Robin Chuan, but she does seem to have a liking for you, Luffy. Sanji said, trying to think of how this was all a dream, and all he had to do was wait it out. She likes me? Luffy asked. Yeah. Zoro replied. Luffy paused. I get it. Luffy said. She likes my clothing. Luffy concluded, putting a hand on his chin, thinking highly of himself for figuring out this difficult mystery. Both Zoro and Sanji let out in exasperation about how dense their captain was. I'm only kidding you guys, but I don't think she likes me. Luffy's voice turned from childish to a somewhat more serious voice. Luffy, you're going to have to man up and take it head on. Remember, you saved her, and the love you put in her is going to be your responsibility. I will take responsibility when the time comes for it. For now we have other things to do. Now I suggest you get some things that you want, because we won't have much of a chance when we are out at sea, or when the plan takes effect for a while. Luffy said, walking out of the men's shared changing room to go get some clothing. -10 minutes later, with Robin and Nami. Are you sure? Robin asked. Of course I'm sure he will love it. Nami said with a cheery smile, getting ready to push her out of the clothing stall. The clothing stall was pretty much a single stall, and there were plenty in the store, lined up against one side of the wall, with a few barriers between, but just a slight shield, so to speak. Nami tried pushing Robin out of the stall, but was confused when Robin protested by holding still, not wanting to walk out of the stall, and it clicked. You want him to be the first, huh? Nami said, not even asking, just as if she was stating a fact. I don't know what you're talking about, Robin said, another blush splashing across her face. You want Luffy to be the first to see you in it, huh? Don't worry, I'll go get him, so just sit tight. Nami said with a smile. Wait, Nami. Robin said, getting Nami's attention. Why are you doing this for me? She asked. Why not? We are Nakama, aren't we? And plus we're both girls, so there's no reason to help out. Nami said. Nami? Robin said neutrally. Nami replied, looking back, as she was halfway through the cloth to the inside of the clothing store. Do you like someone? Robin asked. At her words, Nami paused to think about that question. She had thought about it many times before. She thought that she had a crush on Luffy when he saved her and her town, but it came and went, and she realized she did love Luffy, but in a brother-sisterly way. The man I like acts scared, but is really a strong, brave warrior of the sea. Nami said, smirking a smile on her lips, thinking of a certain someone. Robin gasped, slightly shocked at who she liked, and smiled in acceptance, allowing Nami to leave the stall, in search of Luffy, and possibly someone else. -3 minutes later, with Luffy. So for Luffy, he was searching for some certain clothing items, so he looked around for an aid of some sort to help him, when he ran across one. Boy, can I get a little help? Luffy said with a cheerful smile across his face, causing a blush to arise from the female aide, mostly due to the fact he was currently only wearing his black cargo shorts, and had thrown away his shirt and mantle coat. Yes, she called, and rushed over to assist him. -5 minutes later, with Nami. Nami was walking around looking for Luffy, well him, and another person, but anyways found Zoro looking through some clothing. It seemed like he had some clothing he was holding that looked exactly like his previous, but colored black, with red markings on it for the secondary colors. Boy Zoro, have you seen Luffy? Nami asked Zoro to walk up to him. Yeah, he went off somewhere looking for something, I guess. Zoro said, not even looking up, concentrating on what he was looking at. It was a piece of paper a girl had given him earlier, who ran away with a blush on her face. Of course our Zoro was oblivious to it, =3, well until he read it anyways. Thanks. Nami said, as she started to walk away, but stopped suddenly, and turned back to Zoro. Do you know where Usopp went? She asked. Yeah, he's in the boys' shared storeroom. Zoro said, yet again still absorbed by the letter, until he put it in his pocket, and walked away, for some reason searching for Sanji. Nami said thanks quietly, as Zoro had already walked away, and moved towards the boys' shared storeroom. Sometime later, with Robin. Robin was sitting in her outfit that Nami had picked out for her. The purple frilly swimsuit. She pondered if she would ever have a need for a swimsuit, but then again she would have many chances to show it off, now that she thought about it. You see, she was about to think about how long she would have to wait until Nami had found Luffy, but unfortunately for her, or possibly fortunately for her, she turned to see the cloth get jostled to the side, and in stepped a monkey D. Luffy. Luffy noticed Robin, as he was pretty much about halfway into the stall, and looked up to her. Sugoi Robin, nice look. He said, didn't notice you were in this stall. Oh well, you don't mind if I try this on, do you? Oh no, Captain-san, I don't mind. Robin said, sporting a small blush on her face. It wasn't the reaction she had hoped for, but somehow knew it would be something like this, but never in her dreams did she imagine him not caring if she was in this stall with him or not, changing without a care in the world. Well, then again she had to think twice on that. This was Luffy. Then everything made sense to her. Luffy. Hi. Luffy replied, looking towards Robin, while putting on his new clothing. What do you think of me? She asked. What do you mean? Luffy asked. I mean about me. She said, getting Luffy's mind to travel to what Zoro and Sanji had told him earlier, and he got a good idea. A Luffy idea. Oi Robin. Luffy said. Finished getting dressed, he walked over to Robin and looked at her. Luffy now had on black pants with a shade of red to them, with a red dress shirt buttoned all the way up, with the collar done, with a loose red tie that wasn't on yet that hung around his neck, with a black mantle coat on. The black coat had a lot of white fur for the collar, all the way around, and had a black interior on the inside, with some barely noticeable gray lines going vertically up and down all around the inside. Sorry for the poor description, I'm gonna check the rules to see if links are allowed, pretty sure they're not, sorry. Luffy had his hands outside of the mantle coat just as high-ranking officials usually do, and had his straw hat on. Do you know how to tie ties? Luffy asked, stepping closer to her. Yes, Robin replied, starting to understand what Luffy was saying. If you fix my tie for me, I'll give you something special. Luffy said, smiling and giggling at the end slightly. For Robin, she didn't know what the captain was planning, but either way, present or not, she wanted to fix it anyways. It was quite funny, because, as soon as she saw the tie untied, she had the sudden urge to tie it for him, let alone be asked to do it. So she reached forward to tie it up, and replied, yes Luffy. And fix it. It took a little bit, but Robin finally got the tie done, and stepped 1 foot back to look him over, and had a small blush across her face. Suddenly the proximity of both of their bodies explosively collided to a number close to that one number called 0. Luffy had moved forward, and closed the distance between the two, and pushed his face towards hers, and kissed her. You look amazing, and I think I feel the same way, that I think you do Robin, Luffy said. What did you just say, Captain San? Robin asked slightly, losing her train of thought for a few moments, her entire brain going blank at the thought of Luffy having feelings for her, although she wasn't so sure how he had figured out how far her love went for this man. What I said, I think we have what's called the hots for each other, Luffy said with a big grin. Zoro and Sanji told me about it, he blurted. At this, Robin mentally facepamed, now understanding the situation. Luffy may have grown and become a lot more mature, but it seemed like he didn't have much sense or experience when it came to relationships other than Nakama, friends, and family. It seems like our Luffy was still as dense as ever, with a slight XP boost. Luffy, Robin said, her face inching closer to his. I have something to admit, she continued. What? Luffy asked. I want to let you know it's not because you saved me, and it isn't something I feel like I owe to you. I want to be yours though. I felt like I owed it to you at first, at Alabasta, but I slowly realized that wasn't the reason, Luffy said, looking like he was thinking hard about what she was saying. I'm not sure if I get what you mean, but I'm guessing that you have a mystery hots for me. He said, a huge grin plastered across his face. That's not far off, Luffy-sama, Robin replied. Robin had always wanted to give the utmost respect to Luffy, and add on the same honorific. Sure, she had added the san, but didn't think she should add the sama at the time, but now felt that she had a want to use it instead. Not only by saving her, but those around him, her respect for him, and attraction was out there on the scale. Ha? Sama? Luffy asked, confused. Don't worry about it, Luffy-sama, she said to him, causing Luffy to smile, and carry on without a care in the world. Another update to what Luffy looks like. This time a bit better. I did change it, sorry. Luffy wore a red undershirt, with a black vest over it, and a black top, as well as a black suit unbuttoned all the way, exposing the vest and undershirt easily. He also wore another mantle coat similar in color to his black suit, but was a bit softer, but not really fur, except for the top where the color was all around. It had a semi-thin white-brown line of fur. The mantle coat also had a hood, which was also furred on the line of the outer edge, although Luffy didn't put on the hood, and also kept his arms out of the sleeves, as most captains or marines do. The inside of the mantle coat was pure black, with a soft texture, although he had his arms in the suit. For pants he wore black dress pants which stuck to his legs just like skinny pants, but very slightly less. For shoes, he ditched his sandals, and took some black dress shoes to match his outfit. He also had gotten a package of black string that would tie his hat down to his neck when in battle. With Sanji and Zoro 5 minutes later. Damn it, do you have to continually comment on my clothes? Not like any of yours are any good. Sanji let out with his mouth open, cigarette still hanging on with its gravity-defying ways. You might as well screw yourself. I don't think any women are gonna want you with that kind of attitude, Zoro said with a smirk on his face, as he chuckled at him. Oh yeah? Let's make a bet then, Greenie. First to get a woman wins. Sanji pointed at Zoro for extra emphasis. What's surprise? Zoro asked plainly. What do you mean? It's proving a point, Sanji said. Well, I don't care, because I want a prize, Zoro said kind of childishly, looking the other way. Geez, what do you want then? Sanji asked. The winner has to do what the loser says for an entire week, Zoro said. Unless you're scared. You're on, Sanji let out, walking away fast-paced looking for a woman. With Nami 5 minutes later. Yusuf. Nami called out, finding him ruffling through some clothes in the coat section. Boy, Nami. How's it going? Did you guys find anything good? Yusuf asked casually, looking up at her, receiving eye contact for a moment before looking back to what he was looking for. We found a bunch, and it was nice that our captain wanted to pay for all of it, Nami said, eyes lighting up with dollar signs, Billy signs, to which Yusuf replied with a sweat drop animation, then back to looking through the pile of clothing on the rack. Geez, I bet you're happy about that. Anyways, did you need anything? Yusuf asked. Oh right, I was wondering if you have seen Luffy. Nami asked. Oh, he went to go look for something, not really sure though. Yusuf replied. Oh, what are you looking for? Let me help. Nami said, walking closer to Yusuf. At this, Yusuf looked up, completely stopping what he was doing. This was a first for Nami. Stopping free shopping to help someone. Unheard of. Who are you, and where's the real Nami? Yusuf asked with wide eyes. She's right here, doofus. Now what were you looking for? Nami said with a bright smile. With Luffy 5 minutes later. Luffy had left Robin to find clothing on her own. As he walked around the store, he spotted Miku blushing madly at what she was holding in her hands. She was currently holding 2 different sets of bikinis, one black with white frilly things, and a daring cut. The second one was black with purple frill, the same cut. Why she was holding these things she had no idea, but there was one of the staff from the store standing next to her, insisting that she would look cute in either of the swimsuits. Boy, going swimming? Luffy asked casually with a big grin. And then no. Miku screamed out loud, pushing the swimsuits back onto the rack a bit hard, to which the entire rack fell over. Suddenly a man ran out, with the tag of manager on his left chest. What the hell happened here? The manager yelled, and turned to look at Luffy with an angered expression, until seconds later made an apologetic expression smack into him, as he started sputtering. Luffy, hey the super rookie, hey look, sorry about the outburst, how about a free gift card from our shop? Let me just fix all of this, assistant help him. He yelled the last part, and ran to fix the hangers, and clothes that Miku had dropped, and ran in the opposite direction of Luffy and Miku. Semi-skip, after the shopping spree, all was paid by the gift card 20 minutes later. Thank you, and come again. The manager and staff waved farewell to the Strawats as they left the shop. At the moment, the crew had about 5 bubble suitcases filled with clothing they had gotten from the shop. One bubble was Luffy and Robin's, another was Sanji and Zoro's. The rest were all Nami's, and a small amount was mixed with Yusuf's. Hey Luffy, where are we going now? Zoro asked, walking closer to him. Lunch? He replied with a huge grin. What kind of food are we getting, Luffy-sama? Robin asked casually, alerting a huge face on Sanji as he looked on with absolute displeasure. How had he gotten her to call him that? Oh. I like smileys, if you don't go fuck yourself. No, I won't get rid of them. Robin calling Luffy with the honorific of Sama aroused a few question marks from the crew, but most of them subsided pretty quickly, other than our dear friend Sanji, who had actually stopped walking his chin now on the ground. Geez Curly, are you surprised Luffy doesn't want your food, or the same thing? Zoro said, picking up Sanji and throwing him over his back, and proceeding to carry him back to the rest of the group who had stopped slightly to wait for him. Luffy, do you know what restaurant we're going to? Nami asked. The buffet. Luffy said, giggling, as they walked onwards. Slowly, but surely, a huge restaurant called the fucking buffet was spotted. Now see, Luffy didn't actually know if there was a buffet or not, but was guessing there would be one somewhere, and winged it looking for one, and succeeded. Luffy, you can't be serious? Nami asked frantically. Well, to be honest, I was looking for a buffet, didn't know if they had one or not, but this looks pretty close. Plus look at Sanji, he looks pretty happy to see the restaurant, maybe he's ready to learn new yummy recipes. Luffy said excitedly, completely oblivious of the huge bloody nose Sanji now had. Luffy, you know what type of place this is, right? It's a buffet with naked women and stuff. Usopp more or less stated rather than asked. Boy look, says the women that go in have to strip or are allowed to be used. Zoro said, reading one of the signs next to the huge door. Absolutely not. Nami screamed, pointing at the sign on the window. Oh? To see Nami swan naked. Sanji said with a face, only to be punched into the ground by Nami. Not a slick chance. Nami said with eyes, giving everyone else sweat drops, well except for Luffy, who had already proceeded to walk in with Robin following him. Who cares about the sign, just break the rule. We're pirates after all. Luffy said in a carefree manner. Oh geez, we're gonna have to go in there, aren't we? Yusuf asked with his usual I'm sick thing. Well, think of it on the bright side, me and Curly Brow over there can see who can win the bet sooner than the other. Zoro said, following Luffy into the buffet. After that, everyone else resigned themselves to their fate in a way, and followed suit. Once everyone was inside, Luffy had stopped at a big line to the cashier, and suddenly just started walking past everyone, getting looks of anger, then trying to hide right after realizing who he was. The rest followed Luffy up to the front of the line, then cut in front of the front person, and asked, Oi, do you serve meat here? Getting a response, I need you to go back to the end of the line. You may have big accomplishments, but you're going to need to go back just like the rest. And also, you followers need to follow our policy. He pointed at Robin and Nami, and made a gesture for them to unclothe themselves. Meat? Luffy asked again. I cannot repeat myself. The waiter guy said. Meat? Luffy said. I cannot repeat myself, he said. You just did. Luffy said, smiling at him in mockery. Do we need someone to take care of you? The waiter guy said. Nah, I think I can find the food on my own, never mind. Luffy said, walking away towards the huge feasting area. The feast area had 10 rows of 4 lines each, all with different food of almost any kind. There were desserts, dinner, lunch, breakfast, and salad areas if not more. There were also a crapload of drink dispensers, with all sorts of flavors and drinks. There was also a bar at the far back middle end of the establishment. And for some reason, there was also what seemed like the manager's box high up near the ceiling, which was about 10 to 15 foot square. The ceiling was high, about 40 to 50 feet high, with chandeliers everywhere to illuminate the place, as well as fans to keep it cool. There were plenty of customers within the building already, estimating at about 300 to 400 people. Not all of them seemed like pirates, but a lot did. It was a half and half sort of. There were also a bunch of women walking around naked with somewhat suits on to show they were employees giving men either blowjobs or lap-ins. The waiter's guy felt somewhat ignored, as the gang just walked past him without paying, or listening to a word he had said, especially after embarrassing him like that. The man pulled out a radio device from under his table, and talked into it. "Yeah, I need an escort over here," he said into it, and gave a description of who it was. -5 minutes later. After about 5 minutes, everyone in the group had their own little plate with food on it, and drinks. Zoro and Sanji had decided this place was not where their bet would be. They would have a truce for a day, and went to the bar. Sanji was for once disgusted by the women in here. Not by their appearance, but by how they were whoring themselves out. The rest of the gang were at the table, though sitting in a comfortable booth, next to a large aquarium container, with a bunch of colorful fish in it. Luffy was sitting next to Robin on one of the booths, while Nami was next to Usopp. The only ones not with everyone at the buffet were Chopper, Brook, and Frankie. Chopper hadn't gotten to the island yet, while Brook was out doing a concert on one of the islands for the archipelago. And Frankie was still working on the ship, setting up a couple of adjustments for the trip they were going to have. "Suche," Luffy yelled out after taking a bite of his huge chunk of meat he found. Now we have to stop for a second, and realize that this meat was not found on the 10 rows of tables. Oh no. He took it upon himself to go into the kitchen, and find the meat supply, and took the huge piece of meat they usually cut into a shitload of smaller pieces, and walked back out with it, and brought it back to his table. If not being rude, it was actually quite impressive that he was able to sniff out where the huge piece of meat was, even though all of the smells from all of the food from all of the 10 rows of food. "You like it, Luffy?" Robin asked. "Yes," Luffy said, continuing to eat it, then turned to her, and asked, "Do you want some? I can share." With his huge grin. Robin replied almost instantly, "I would love some, Luffy," to which Luffy ripped off a huge chunk, and placed it on her already empty plate. She had only gotten a salad, as Luffy had passed it. For some reason, both Nami and Robin were actually kind of scared of being in this place, and stuck close to their loved one for protection on instinct. Robin followed Luffy, and Nami had followed Usopp when they had split up at the drink station. "Usopp, come with me. I want to go look at something," she said, pulling on Usopp's nose in the direction of some dessert zone of the buffet. Hey, can't you get it yourself? Sheesh, Nami, I'm coming, you don't have to hold my nose," Usopp said with a cry. "Okay," Nami said cheerfully, still pulling on his nose, and with a sigh of Usopp, he followed her. The crew had been eating, well minus the two at the bar, at the same table enjoying conversations with each other, about their 2 years away from each other. Luffy had told them about his training, but not anything about the skills he developed, just mentioning how harsh it was. Nami had told them about the sky islands she found, as well as the windologist she met up with to extend her powers of weather. Lisa told how he got fat like when Fluffy ate a huge amount of food, or used gear third, and how he got rid of it, and turned it all into muscle, showing off his strength by picking up the entire table, which Luffy had a plan for later. Robin told how she met up with the rebel army, and met Luffy's dad. They were all shocked when Luffy didn't ask about his father, but instead commented on it with, "I wonder if we'll meet up," and continued munching at his huge pile of food before him, with Sanji and Zoro. "I'm telling you, this guy gets lost on straight paths," Sanji said, laughing his ass off. "Shut up, the curly suit. I can kick your ass, and that's all I need," Zoro replied with fire in his eyes. "I bet you both are pretty strong coming to the line of the New World though, and being a part of the Straw Hat Pirates. Do you guys know anything about how the territories work?" the bartender asked out of curiosity. "No? But I'm sure we will manage," Zoro replied boredly. "Isn't it the 4 Yonko who control it?" Sanji asked, wondering what the bartender was getting at. "What?" the bartender said, shocked. "No, by all means no. The New World is filled with so many pirate crews, many more than just the 4 Yonko, although they do own a lot more than the others," the bartender said, getting shocked looks from both Sanji and Zoro. "You mean the 4 Yonko don't own the entire New World?" Zoro asked. "Well, the New World is a lot larger than the first half of the Grand Line, so yeah, they can't own the entire thing, plus there are a lot of pirates there, as well as the main forces of the Marines," the bartender said. "What do you mean main forces?" Sanji asked. "The actual force of the Marines, the ones out here are child's play to them. The ranks are the same, but harder to attain. For example, a platoon could take on the entire forces over here, minus the admirals and some of the vices," he said. "The weirdest thing is, they have a map of the New World, but not the first half of the Grand Line, although there is a small area of it that is unexplored. When you get to the starting point, which is Fishman Island, they have the map that is somewhat updated constantly. Good way to make money. You can purchase a system that gets you sent a map every week or so, with the updates. I think there were about 200 plus pirate groups over there right now that actually hold land in their names, with another 3,000 plus trying to claim some as their own. Sanji and Zoro were shocked at first, now they were unconscious. This was unreal. They had never heard of this blasphemy. Why the hell have I never heard of this then? It sounds like they are even stronger than they were in the first half. Why would the Marines not be out here if they have forces there? Or tell it to the public? Zoro asked, being held back a little by Sanji. I think it would be because the Marines are having a really hard time right now over there. No one has an advantage, not the Yonko or the Marines. The Yonko are all equal at the moment, keeping them stuck to a certain amount of land, or amount of troops. Although all of them are vying for more power, especially the Marines. There are a huge amount of people living in the New World that either join the pirates, or join the Marines, so not a lot of them get sent out here, rather to fight the war out there. The only reason there are any Marines out here in the first half is to regulate order. It's the underbranch of the Navy. Zoro and Sanji sat there for a few moments, absorbing the information before abruptly getting up in search of their captain. Sanji and Zoro had just heard the biggest news they had heard, since they would be taking a 2-year training time away from coming back to the Straw Hat crew to regroup. They had never thought that these were the small pieces of the Navy Marines. They would be dealing with the Navy now, not the Marines. This was quite a shock. Sanji and Zoro were looking around for their captain, when they finally spotted him standing around a small group of bodies piled on the floor looking down at them boredly. "Boy, Luffy, what happened?" Sanji asked. "Oh, these guys were trying to touch Robin, and she kinda knocked them out," Luffy replied. "You pieces of shit filth, how dare you touch my Robin Chuan?" Sanji nearly broke the glass. He yelled so hard, and ran over to the fallen pile of 3 bodies, and continued to profusely beat the ever-living crap out of their lifeless, and already unconscious bodies. Zoro groaned out, "Luffy, we have something important to ask you about." At this, Sanji stopped his ministrations to look over, and realize why he had come to their captain with Zoro in the first place. "Yeah, we need to speak to Luffy," Sanji said in a serious voice. "Follow me." Robin goes over to Nami and Usopp for a little while, Luffy said, walking towards the back of the cafe area, being followed closely by Sanji and Zoro. With Robin, I wonder what they are going to ask him, and in such a serious manner. What could it be? Robin thought to herself, as she walked towards Nami and Usopp's table, and instantly got called out by Nami. "Oi Robin, tell Usopp he owes me 300 million belly, right? He lost a bet a while ago," Nami said with a crossing her arms over her large bust, jiggling them slightly. Right now Nami was a bit upset, and acting childish because Usopp was seemingly more dense than he let on about his inventions. "I'm not sure about Nami-san, but I do think he needs a new bet, don't you think?" Robin said, sitting right next to her at the booth table. "I know, I did it backwards. I should explain the area before writing about it. Sorry, next time D." Nami had chosen a booth table that could easily fit 4 people, or even 6, as someone sat in the middle of 2 people on either side. It was a quite simple boothing table, with the table in the middle, and a set of booths on the left and right side. The booth walls were quite high, and gave a sense of privacy within the cafe, even if it was quite loud in there, but not too loud. "Robin, weren't you with Luffy?" Nami asked. But Sanji-san and Zoro-san had something to discuss with Luffy-sama, and went to speak privately. It seems serious, Robin explained. "And you were allowed to go with them?" Nami asked about her temper again. "I trust Luffy wants to discuss it with the top 2 before the rest of us. I trust him, and I'll wait for it," Robin said, and started to eat some of the cake she had brought with her from the previous table. "I guess you're right, we are going into a new world," Nami said with a big smile on her face. "With Chopper and Frankie. This needs supper, special work," Frankie screamed to the world as he stood on the deck of the Sunny Go. "So you're going to take apart the Sunny and then rebuild it?" Chopper asked. "Well, it's not that simple. See, Luffy said he could get some special wood for us, which I'll use to start a basic ship, one that we can use just in case, and then he'll use one of the Grove workspaces. Luffy said he can get us one, and then I'll work on the ship. After that, I'll dismember Sunny Go, but she'll always be with us, cause it's the same wood, see?" Frankie explained. "Oh, I see. So we don't have to say goodbye to Sunny," Chopper said, wiping the tears off his face. "Exactly, but we also have to welcome the new wood that comes with it. It could be like, wood sex," Frankie said. "Hentai?" Chopper yelled at Frankie, starting to laugh, and stopped the shock of losing Sunny Go. "I am hentai," Frankie said, pushing his nose in to change his hairstyle. "Do it again." Chopper yipped happily with a huge grin across his face, obviously entertained by his nakama. "Okay," Frankie said, and started to show Chopper more cool super things. "I know about it," Luffy said. "Nani?" shouted both Sanji and Zoro in unison at their captain's answer. "So you understand about the New World system, and their navy more importantly," Sanji yelled quietly, as they were in the back of the actual cafe's building. The area was just like any other normal commute alleyway, with trash cans, and a few bubble cars of the employees. "Yes, I wanted to tell you guys a little later about all of that, and how we were not going to the New World," Luffy started, receiving large eyes from both Sanji and Zoro. "But, why? Aren't you going to find One Piece?" Sanji slightly stuttered. "Oi, you're not backing down, are you, Luffy?" Zoro asked. "No? You're just not strong enough yet," Luffy explained. "What?" Zoro said. "I am strong enough now. Give me another chance at our spar 1v1, and I'll show you my true strength." Zoro said, getting heated to prove himself to his captain, with Sanji close behind. Oi, I went in too, I didn't know we were going to go all out, I can do more. That's not the problem, Luffy said. Then what is it? Zoro and Sanji asked at the same time. Think guys, I'm supposed to be the backup here, and you're forgetting all about Nami and Robin. Not to mention Chopper and Yusuf. They don't have haki, and without it they cannot fight in the new world. You two have almost achieved it. Luffy said, getting wide eyes from both Sanji and Zoro, as he said that, which almost immediately turned into sweat drops, as Luffy started picking his nose. Hitting stares, Luffy pulled his finger out of his nose, and continued. Look, anyways, I was thinking of a way to break it to everyone. We need about another 2/3 months, so I can at least get you guys ready, and attempt at the rest. Mika gave me a good idea, and that's why we're going to Impel Down. So that's why you had chosen to go with her to Impel Down, Sanji said, figuring it out. I get it too, Zoro said, slapping a fist, and catching it with his other hand, as if he had figured something really good out. Basically we're gonna go fight the Marines at Impel Down. Sort of. Luffy explained, but said nothing more. Right, well let's head inside now. Also, quick note. They got to the archipelago earlier before the pirate army had assembled there. So now it's about to go down. After the 10-day time skip ahead. 10 days time skip 10 days. Now presenting, the Million Sunny Go. Super. Frankie yelled out into the air. Currently, the entire Straw Hat crew was on a factory island on the archipelago for shipbuilding etc. They had cranes and high-end tools, with huge hangars for storage. Luffy had gone over to said establishment, and scared the owners shitless to allow Frankie a space to work. Luffy also had received some money to be used in a bank from Bo Hancock, and used it to get a special type of wood, called amber rock, which was the exact same thing as the Adam's wood, but different heritages of tree. Expensive stuff. About 700 million belly was used to purchase this wood, out of the 800 given to Luffy by Bo. Luffy would have to repay her somehow, he thought. Right now, there was a huge sheet cloth covering a massive boat-shaped item obviously built by the Frankie Super, but had not been unsheathed yet. The only person to have seen it was Frankie himself, being the only one to build it, but was an expert craftsman, and had learned how to build even faster with his new and amazing robo-armor body. Presenting, the supper. Frankie screamed, as he pressed a button, and mashed it a bunch of time in excitement, as a large crane, about 100 meters high, pulled at the cloth to expose a ship about triple in size of the Sunny Go, and about double in height, with pretty similar features, other than the extra accommodations. Ship information. The ship is 3 times larger than the Sunny Go, and twice as tall. By 3 times, I mean 3 times the amount of wood, so not per se a super fat ship, but a lot bigger. Think Whitebeard's width of his ship. The ship also had 3 floors, with a workshop floor, from where there used to be a hatch in the grass on the Sunny Go. Adding to this, the grass area almost tripled as well, with an extended swing set and some picnic tables. It also had an area of sheet metal, which underneath hid a small pool of water that could be jacuzzi feet. There now were rooms for each member of the Straw Hat crew. In total, there were 15 bedrooms, and 2 master bedrooms, with the captain's quarters. In addition, there was a bunk room at the back of the ship, on the bottom floor taking half of the ship's length, while the other half made up a percentage of the storage room. A lot of meat storage a lot. The second floor was used as a dining area, being about 3/4 of the length of the ship, while the rest was a closed-off kitchen, with a bar counter running the entire width of the ship to serve any hungries. At the bow of the ship, and sides of the dining hall, there were luxurious windows giving an excellent view, with amazing dining booths, all nailed down, so nothing would come loose, but all had extremely nice views, especially the ones on the sides and front of the ship. The third floor was used for 3 different things. The first at the back of the ship was a library, taking up about 1/4 of the length of the ship. The second was the bunkhouse, which could hold around 30 to 50 people. The rooms are on the top side of the ship. Like the crow's nest etc. We'll get to that. The third floor also accommodated the showering and bathroom. There were 4 in total. They took up another 1/4 of the length of the ship, while the bunkhouse took 2/4. These bathrooms were for the use of ulterior members, as each bedroom had its own private bathroom. The bedrooms are somewhat lined against the back of the ship topside. The captain's quarters is right where you would think it to be, right under the helm, although there are 2 places the ship can be steered from. The helm, right above the captain's quarters, and the main controls in Frankie's workshop, in the basement section. The helm was about 3 times as large as the old one, but used a lot of the same wood to make it, making a huge sun lion head figure. This ship adopted the same mast style the Sunny Go had, with 2 main masts, with huge carpets of sail going along each one, as well as a secondary backup, for a total of 3 masts. Luffy, POV. Alright guys, it's time. I say out loud, getting everyone's attention. Ha. Zoro said, the others following shortly after in unison. It's time to test you guys again. I say to them, as I laugh. But really, this time I'll prove what I'm worth, Luffy. 100% now that I know you won't die. Zoro said out loud confidently, being followed up by Sanji. I'll prove my worth in front of these beautiful ladies. Good, now everyone follows me. I say, as I jump down from the ship my builder Frankie just made. It's amazing. I knew he would make it better than before, but this is unbelievable. -10 mins later. In a field, close to the Million Sunny Narrator POV. Everyone had followed Luffy to a big opening in the forest close to the ship area, where Frankie had built the Million Sunny. Luffy had walked silently after jumping down from the ship, allowing everyone to think about what he had in store for them. They were wondering if what he had shown them last time wasn't all he had, or maybe some new battle plan. Luffy reached the middle of the opening, and turned to his crew. He looked at each one of them, looking into each of their eyes for a brief moment, before looking at the next. When he was done looking at all of them, he squatted down, and started to speak. Listen, all of you will fight. Not only two, and not only one. You will all fight, as a whole to take me down. Luffy said. Here he tossed them a pair of sea stone prism handcuffs. If you can catch me, and put those on me, you win. If not, I win. There is no bet this time, don't worry Zoro, Sanji. But I will be testing you. I will be gauging your strength. This time, it will be on my mark. Luffy explained, then yelled out, on your mark. At this everyone got into stances, and prepared for battle. Go. Luffy yelled, and jumped back 50 feet, as everyone got ready to strike. Everyone, listen to me. Zoro called out, formation, in front, Sanji by my side. Frankie middle, Robin Nami Usopp get the back, you two are long ranged. Chopper attacks Luffy randomly. You're not a part of the formation. As soon as you get him to move we will follow. Treat this as a real threat, so listen to me now. Zoro yelled. A dark black and red haze had come over him, an intimidation no one had seen before. They obeyed without a word, maybe a slight huff from Sanji. Interesting. Luffy thought good. Chopper jumped forward using a walk point to transform, and galloped fast towards Luffy. As soon as he closed in on Luffy, he shouted heavy point, and swung hard with his right towards Luffy, only for him to dodge it, and move to the side. But, as Luffy dodged, Sanji was there in an instant with a kick aimed at his head, which Luffy simply dodged by getting low, but with the sword coming his way to slice anything in his path, he was forced to jump backwards away from all of them entirely. As Luffy jumped backwards, all three of Sanji, Chopper, and Zoro were in close proximity, but no longer close to Luffy, allowing Nami to pop a lightning bolt on top of Luffy that hit point blank. They had worked together to get him into that position, but there was one thing they had forgotten about on the spur of the moment. I'm Rubber Nami. Luffy grinned, walking out of the lightning bolt smoke it left from hitting the floor below him. Crap, guys, look out. Nami yelled out just in time for the three to jump out of the way, as Luffy smashed the floor with his fist, creating a crater in the earth where his fist left the earth. Dang, don't get hit by that, Zoro yelled. Obviously Sanji yelled back. Follow this up, guys. Chopper yelled out, back into walk point, running at top speeds towards Luffy, but instead of going towards him, Chopper decided to gallop around Luffy to minimize his movements. Frankie yelled out, shooting a yellow beam at Luffy in the middle of Chopper's circle storm, only for Luffy to jump into the shot, and deflect it away with his arm, and fly down towards Sanji and Zoro. Look out, curly brow, Zoro said, blocking the split attack from Luffy. Luffy had thrown out both of his arms in an attempt to hit both of them at the same time, Zoro blocking with his sword, and Sanji with his leg of flame, timed jambles. Luffy, you're using Haki. Well, I couldn't just touch a sword of Zoro, or the leg of Blackfoot Sanji without it now, could I? Luffy asked tauntingly, jumping up again to gain distance from them. Frozen Arch. Nami yelled, a wave of water flying over Luffy, being frozen instantly from one side of the wave to the other. Got him. Luffy then twisted his body at a high speed, breaking the ice that had managed to reach his leg, and jumped out, letting the ice fall to the floor harmlessly. Black Rock Star. Usopp shouted, shooting a smoky black object at Luffy. Luffy, wanting to see what it did, allowed it to hit him point blank. It exploded immediately in a huge puff of smoke, and, as soon as it hit, Zoro and Sanji shot a dual barrage of attacks at Luffy's smoke ball in the air. Hayaka Kappo Cannon. 100-pound Kappo Cannon custom, Zoro shouted, shooting multiple barrages with only Shusui in his hand, slashing hard and fast. Diam Jambles, Flame Shudo, Devil's Flame SHOT custom, Sanji yelled, spinning rapidly with bolts of flame coming out, shooting at high speeds towards Luffy. The flame shots, as well as the slash cannon shots, fired at Luffy for a good 3 to 5 seconds, before they cooled off, waiting to see what was underneath the ball of smoke that lit the sky. What are you looking at? Luffy asked, tapping Zoro on the shoulder, causing Zoro to immediately freak out and swing in Luffy's direction, but missing due to Luffy now being missing. Where did he go? Zoro asked. I don't know, he was right there till you swung at him. Now he's gone, Usopp yelled. After a minute of looking around, Usopp finally caught something with his eye, and looked up. Guys, look up at the sky, Usopp screamed. What now? Zoro asked, looking up to see a red dot floating downward. It was Luffy. Luffy was now floating downward toward the middle of the open field, and finally touched down on the ground, and looked up to everyone. That was a great display of power, guys. We can end it here, you guys should take a rest, let's go back to the Million Sunny. Luffy said, laughing, as he ran towards the ship. Well, that didn't work, Sanji said. But teamwork though, guys. Looks like you're in charge though, Zoro. Nami said, thumbs upping him, as she ran towards Sunny, being followed by everyone else. Yeah, it didn't work, but it's that rubberhead. What did we expect? Zoro said, groaning, as he ran to keep up with the others. Third-person POV. Luffy had been waiting at the Million Sunny, on top of the great big sun lion head for his crew. Nami, being the first one to the ship, climbed up the side and hopped into a lawn chair on the grass of the main deck. Luffy, by any chance do you know where Brook is? Nami called out. Yes, he just got to the and is doing a concert right now. We leave as soon as he's done. Luffy replied, lazily lying on his back, looking up at the now darkening sky. The sky was now turning a darkish orange, but with a slight shade of pure black. A few stars were starting to line his vision, as it was getting kind of late. Damn it, Luffy, I don't know how or when, but you seriously did some training. Zoro's voice called, as he landed on the main deck, a few meters from where Luffy was lying down. Barely is strong. Luffy said, laughing, mainly to himself. Heh, I bet is getting scared. Sanji yelled out, as he was seen air walking towards them, and landed right next to Zoro. Don't go soft on me, Mr. Macho. Sanji started looking directly into Zoro's open eye, some static visible between the two, but after a few seconds both humphed and turned their heads from each other. Sanji decided it was about time to make some grub for everyone. He hadn't had a chance to cook yet, letting FIX1 Shabby give them food she had, while they had waited for the ship to be finished. Luffy, I'll get started on food. It'll be done in about 45 minutes, Sanji said. I'll come with you, Zoro said, as he followed Sanji through the main doorway to the staircase that led to the different levels of the Million Sunny. 45 minutes later, narrator POV. Ding, ding, ding. A bell rang, signaling chow time. It was Sanji, or well more specifically Sanji ordering Zoro to press the button on the wall that alerted everyone to chow time. Zoro did it, grudgingly. I did it, you shitty cook, calm your curls down. Zoro grumbled, looking in Sanji's direction. Yeah, I heard it was Marimo. And how much of your dinner do you want? Luffy would love it, Sanji said, knowing he would get to Zoro with that comment. What did you say? I'll eat what I want. You may be the cook, but that doesn't mean you can't feed me. Isn't it your job, curly brow? Zoro said, fuming. Calm down, Zoro. I'll feed you. Just calm down, Sanji said, letting Zoro's name calm him down a little. He didn't think his joke would piss him off that much. Better frickin' feed me, stupid cook. Zoro mumbled, walking over to the dining area, picking a seat that was next to the front of the ship. The huge windows give him an excellent view of the ocean glistening white bouncing off the water from the moonlight. Meshi. Luffy screamed, running into the dining area. He picked a spot closest to the kitchen that was sort of a bar-like area, where from the kitchen you could be like a bartender if you wanted. Of course, Luffy never actually drank sake, he just didn't like it for some reason. He preferred juice. Super, I set it up like that on purpose for Sanji. So if you wanted, you could have people order from the bar area, and you can reach right over and give food to those who sit here, Frankie said, walking into the scene. And true to his word, the bar area was somewhat like a sushi bar, where it had a glass case where food could be stored, but it was also easy to reach over and hand platters of food if need be. Sanji usually didn't eat until everyone had their food. And if the crew ever got bigger, he would be on duty in the kitchen a lot more often. That was later down the road though. Meshi, 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 Luffy yelled. Wait for everyone else to be seated, Luffy. Promise I'll feed you to your heart's content. Actually, let's go with halfway full Luffy. Sanji caught himself, reminding himself how much food it would take to fill a Luffy. Well, I'll feed you what we have on second thought, Luffy. Just don't starve everyone else, Sanji said with a smile, earning one that was slightly whiter from Luffy. Just then, the rest of the crew walked in, minus Brook. Along with the rest of the crew, FIX2 Shabby and Miku were with them. Frankie decided to sit at a table that looked pretty much built for him. It was slightly taller than the other tables, and was near the middle of the ship near the wall on the left side. Robin decided to sit with Nami near the middle of the dining area, while Usopp opted to sit near Luffy, while 2 seats to the right, so he could at least have some reaction time when Luffy tried to snatch his food. Miku also opted to sit near Luffy, sitting directly to the left of him, not knowing what kind of monster he was around food. Unfortunately, FIX3 Shabby decided to sit with the girls over in the middle of the dining area, and waited patiently. After everyone was seated, Sanji started passing out all of the food, telling everyone not to eat until everyone had a plate. You could literally see the saliva Luffy had trying to control himself. As he waited, he ended up eating about half, losing his will more than once, kind of just quickly sucking in the food like the endless vacuum he was. Everyone in the room sweat dropped at Luffy's antics. Fortunately, everyone had their plates, and everyone started to dig in, except for Sanji, as he had to set up a few extra plates near Luffy, so he wouldn't have to keep getting more for the monster. But for some reason, after Luffy inhaled his first plate, he actually ate at a somewhat normal rate. Slightly faster than everyone else, but this was Luffy. This was particularly slow compared to how he usually ate his food. Luffy suddenly turned to Miku as he was eating and looked at her for a few moments until Miku looked back at him to ask him what he wanted, but was cut off by Luffy. You realize I'm a pirate, right? Luffy asked, completely serious. That's why I asked you for help in the first place. Miku yelled at him, turning to face him. I'm going to have to put a price on helping your sister, Luffy said, looking back at her. Suddenly at this, Miku visibly paled. 100 ideas of what Luffy might want to take from her made her head spin. What does she have to offer him? Money? Work? She didn't have anything in her body. There was no way this guy would want to use her like that, or make her a slave. She still couldn't help being scared that might be what this man wanted. Join my crew, Luffy said with a wide grin. Ha. Miku said, completely thrown off by what Luffy had just said. What did you just say? Miku asked, disbelieving, just above a whisper. I just told you, join my crew. Luffy said, smiling. You will be under me, and I'll do whatever I can to help your sister. At this point Miku was leveling the cost of what it would take to get Bonnie out of FIX4 prison. Miku was originally planning on going with Bonnie after they were done freeing her from the FIX5 prison. But at this point, she didn't really have any other choice, and for some reason it didn't seem like that bad of a thing to join this man's crew. I accept, Miku said softly. I couldn't hear you, what did you say? Luffy said, moving his hand up to his ear as he shoveled food into his mouth calmly. I said I'll join you, Minky D. Luffy. Miku stood up, causing everyone to look at her, as she screamed at Luffy, bright red cheeks, as she looked at the ground in front of her. Yosh, welcome to the crew. Luffy said, smiling wide. Welcome to the crew. Everyone else cheered her on to make her feel welcomed, and drank their drink in front of themselves. Welcome to Miku. Everyone sang out, well minus Zoro, who wasn't much of a nice guy. As everyone was enjoying their dinner, Sanji had moved from the kitchen area to the dining area, so he could eat too. He had his own food in his hand, and was deciding where to eat, when he thought of a good idea. Zoro's head whipped up so fast, his neck might have snapped off. Out of all the places to sit, you want to sit at my table? Zoro asked angrily. Look, let's try to get along with Zoro. I use your name. Now try using mine. Sanji said, not as a demand, but more of a request. Sensan Sanji, Zoro mouthed out. Three, Sanji, I didn't know you stuttered so much, Zoro. Sanji said, as he sat down across from Zoro. The table they were at was quite a small table. The ones lining the front of the Million Sunnies dining area were two-seaters, one on each side. Look, I know you don't like me, and to be honest I don't like you that much either, but we're supposed to be teammates, right? I'm just trying to fix our friendship. Sanji sighed, trying to be the peacemaker was gonna be a lot more tough than he thought it would be. After all, they were pretty much sworn FIXIT6. But that didn't mean they couldn't be friends, right? Sanji had always kinda wanted to be good friends with Zoro. He knew though that he would have to be the first one to stop the name calling and snide comments. Fine, just don't get in my way, Sanji. Zoro said, looking out the window, his eyes plastered to the ocean view, concentrating on not looking at Sanji. They continued to eat in peace, while Sanji eating, and Zoro drinking cup after cup of sake he personally got from Sanji from the kitchen, that Zoro was able to sling over his arm, and fill up a cup that connected to the sake jug for mobile use. It was one of the reasons Zoro decided in his mind, Sanji was actually making an attempt for them to be friends. And to be completely honest, not that he was ever going to admit it to the curly chef, he wanted to be friends with him. Though the irony that both wanted to be friends, but neither knew of either's intentions. 20 minutes later, narrator POV. At this point, everyone was pretty much finishing up their dinner. Luffy had gotten to about his 9th serving, only 2 bowls left on the counter. Everyone had pretty much finished, but were talking amongst themselves, just having a good time, being in each other's company. Sanji, I know it has something to do with your cooking. You cook my food differently, is that why I can't slurp it all down? Luffy said, disappointment in his voice. I can't believe you figured it out so fast. Yeah, it's a different type of cooking that has a lot more calories in it, but it isn't in such a big quantity. It also slows down how fast someone can eat it. I probably couldn't eat more than 2.5 of those plates of food. You can eat slowly like us from now on, and we can stay at sea longer because of it. I did the same to everyone. That's why we didn't have to eat that much. Sanji explained, as he walked back into the kitchen putting the dishes. It was still really good. Thanks, Sanji. Luffy thanked him, getting up to go take a bath. It had been a long day, and he needed some rest afterward. Closely followed behind Luffy was Miku, who didn't actually know where he was going, but followed anyway. Luffy just shrugged it off, as she might be going in the same direction as him. Since he was going to his room, since it had a bathroom installed in it, thanks to Frankie. Luffy reached his door, and noticed Miku was still behind him, so he opened the door, and let her in, wondering what she wanted. After letting Miku in, Luffy immediately jumped onto the LUSH Fix IT8 king-size bed, with satin red-black blankets. The sheets were black, and the pillows were red with a black lining. The room itself had a red-black color scheme. The flooring was a black carpet, while the walls were a deep blood red. The room was pretty standard, as Luffy didn't ask for anything in specific for his room to have. Just a bed, a desk on the side of the room, and a dresser next to his bed. Luffy-senpai, Miku said nervously. Hi. Luffy said, jumping up and down on the bed. Hey stupid, stop jumping up and down. Miku yelled, causing Luffy to stop and look at her funny from her outburst. I mean, look, can I, you know. Miku said nervously again, his sentences stopping. I'm not a mind reader, Mickey. What is it you wanted again? Luffy said, forgetting her name, typical Luffy stuff. It's Miku. Miku screamed, throwing a hard kick at Luffy's right side, only for Luffy to disappear and reappear behind Miku, grabbing her neck and putting her in a compromising hold, falling to the bed. Luffy on top of her, he looked at her with a smile. Gotcha, Luffy said simply. Just as this happened, the door opened, as Robin walked in looking wide-eyed at what Luffy was doing. Love, why? Robin said, confused at what her captain was doing. Molesting the newcomer. How come she didn't get molested when she joined? What the hell did she think just then? No way. Well no, she couldn't deny her attraction to the young captain of the Strowats. Oh, hi Robin. It looks like it's not only you guys who I have to train. Miku will need some as well. Luffy said, getting off Miku and giving her a hand to sit up. Miku, we haven't gone over where you'll be sleeping, but you can ask Frankie for which room you'll be staying in. Oh yeah, Robin, did you need something? Luffy said, then asking Robin. Oh right, Usopp wanted to ask you something downstairs. He's with Frankie on the bottom floor. Robin said, walking out the door and heading to her own room, but immediately changing her mind, having a better course of direction. Feel free to use my room, I don't use it much anyways, just to sleep and bathe, but like I said Frankie can set you up with a room, or you can just pick one that's not occupied. The ones with the blank name tags aren't being used right now. I'll get Frankie to make you a sign for your room, and he can customize it later. Luffy said heading out of the room towards where he was needed. Okay. Miku said putting a hand on her neck where Luffy had put his hand and had her at his mercy and walk out of the room in search of a room to sleep. She needed some rest. Tomorrow she could do what she needed, but that would come later. Character info. For the characters I make up, we'll have more descriptions, like eye color etc. For Luffy etc. they don't need it. For the fighting style, it's only what is known about them at the time. Later they will show hidden things that you didn't know about. Luffy. Height. 5'9". Description. Luffy wears a satin red dress shirt with a deep red tie to match it. For pants he wears black dress pants with a shade of red to them. For shoes he wears black dress shoes. He also wears a black overcoat that isn't too thick, with fur lining the top. The fur is white, but has a slight red tint to it. Fighting style. Luffy is a hand-to-hand combatant. He has trained his body to move at high speeds, using an edited version of Soru that he was given from Rayleigh, named Setsu. The technique is almost the same as Soru, kicking the air multiple times to send you in a direction, but instead is a Kaki-induced jump. No specifics available. Luffy has 3 gears, specially made to improve his fighting capability himself earlier on about 2 years ago. Gear 1 is the normal walk around and regular fighting stance. Gear 2 is when Luffy needs extra raw power, and is when he is fighting at his hardest. He pumps his arms or legs, and makes his bullet rush faster, causing a triple power output as the effect, making him faster and stronger. Gear 3 is when Luffy bites open his rubber hand and blows into his bones, causing him to grow into a giant, while a single limb is the limit. Although it may be slower, the power along with the strike with said limb is considerably more powerful. Haki conquers observation and armament, as well as willpower. Agility. Luffy has Setsu at its highest at levels at 9. Higher the number, the faster it is. 79 is his max. Although limits of the sea limit this to 4 when over the ocean directly. Explain more at bottom. Zoro. Height. 6'0". Description. Zoro wears a deep red robe that opens up at belly level, exposing his abs and chest to anyone in front of him. He has a dark black sash that ties the robe in place right around his hip. He also puts his swords in the sash. On top of this he has a deep dark red captain's cloak with black lining and black buttons. Zoro also wears his dark green bandana, although sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. Fighting style. Zoro uses Santori style, meaning 3 blades at once. Although he now only uses his 3 blade style when he needs to or wants to. It really depends. Zoro's swords. Maido. Weido Ichimonji Sandai Katetsu Maido. Shusei. Hand-to-hand combat is an option. Haki. Armament. Willpower. Agility. He has sword. Level 15. Usopp. Height. 5'11". Description. Usopp wears black satin dress pants, with black dress shoes, and a gold belt buckle that is engraved brave in kanji to secure his pants. He also wears a red satin dress shirt with a black top. His hair is an unruly mess, and wears it in different styles sometimes. Sometimes an afro, sometimes just letting it go has a bad head. Sometimes hell will come. But that's only on special occasions. He also still has his goatee. Fighting style. Usopp still uses a slingshot, although a lot bigger now with a longer handle, and slightly bigger net to draw back and shoot. Although Usopp has been wondering slightly about new weapons he wants to use, he is beginning to move towards guns, and has his slingshot as a backup for when things go south. Haki. NA. Agility. NA, although his running is slightly faster than most. Chopper. Height. Variable. Description. Chopper mostly uses his walk point, meaning basic reindeer status about half the time moving around. For the rest he will use his small cute and cuddly form to use his hands to read medical books, or do surgeries depending. But when he's out in public he likes to use the walk point more often than not. Unless he's in cute form he will usually ride on someone's shoulder. Usually Luffy, Zoro, or Sanji's. Fighting style. Chopper has 7 points. The basic 7 from the 9. Haki. NA. Agility. NA. Walking point he is pretty fast though. Nami. Height. 5'7". Description. Nami wears a lot of different things. Usually it will be told in the story what she is wearing at the time, ranging from sexy wear to a basic suit for fun. Fighting style. Nami uses a blue rod to produce bubbles of weather, such as lightning bubbles that accumulate to make storms of thunderclouds, etc. Nami is moving towards using a hand-to-hand combat style, as well as ranged guns like pistols. Haki. NA. Agility. NA, she's pretty slow at. Sanji. Height. 5'11". Description. Sanji wears a similar outfit to Yusuf, adopting the red satin dress shirt with a black top. Although his shirt had black lining along the cuffs of the shirt as well as the color being black. Black dress pants and black dress shoes to top it off. Fighting style. Sanji uses foot to face combat. Sanji has mastered the devil's kick, which he can use at any time without burning his clothes off due to buying a certain silk that is hard to burn. He spins at a super fast rate and turns his leg into a fire red hot kicking machine. Haki. Observation. Agility. Moonwalk, airwalk and soar level 18. Robin. Height. 6'2". Description. Same as Nami. Fighting style. Robin uses hand-to-hand fighting, not that powerful, as of yet, as she mainly uses he devil fruit power to just kinda snap people's necks. Although she can use punches and kicks to hurt her opponents. Haki. Observation. Agility. Soar level 6. Frankie. Height. 7'11". Description. Frankie wears a satin black dress shirt, but not buttoned up at all, kind of like a Hawaiian shirt he used to wear, as well as some dark red speedos to top it off. Fighting style. Frankie is a robot man, he fires Zen missiles, and shoots people up with his own guns that pop out of his wrists. Frankie also has every ability he had in the anime, rolling around on his little tank tracks instead of walking. Fuck gravity. Haki. Armament to a small degree, adding it to his bullets. Agility. Soar level 3. Only when he is standing, not using his tracks. Brook. Height. 9'1". Description. Brook wears long black satin dress pants, with red lining along the sides, as well as the buttons being a deep shade of red. He also wears a deep red satin shirt with a black overcoat similar to Luffy's, but he actually has his hands in the sleeves. He will often open up the buttons and make a bone joke about him having no meat on his ribs. Bone joke. Fighting style. Brook has become one of the stronger members of the Strowak crew. He uses his cane sword with deadly accuracy, and is usually a lot more serious than he had been before, along with a million bone jokes on the side. Haki. Observation. Armaments. Agility. Soar level 23. Miku. Height. 4'8". Description. Miku looks exactly like Shauna from Shakugan no Shauna. I didn't want to type out how she looked. I'm bad enough as it is. Attitude. She acts exactly like Taiya from Naruto, although her attitude is about half as pissed off as her. Miku is easily shy about most things, but apparently brash and straightforward. Fighting style. Miku uses a single sword that comes out of her crimson armor. Sacred Set, Martha Unleash, is basically calling out her sword. The only actual armor it is a black cloak that she can put the sword in, or pull it out. Instead of following the anime I'm taking this from, it is a pink-black burst, with a flame or pink-black. Haki. Observation. Agility. Soar level 12. Soar Setsu idea. Soar is 30 miles per hour each level, so level 4 would be 120 miles per hour. Setsu is 5 times as fast as Soar, so level 4 would be 480 miles per hour. Soar and Setsu are limited by the ocean, whether or not someone is a devil fruit user or not. It is the will of the ocean that limits the speed. The ocean believes people shouldn't be flying over it, rather they should be on a ship. Mother Nature's a bit chained. Ocean limit. Level 4 Setsu. At 480 mph. Also, the rest of the crew that use these abilities are a lot slower than Luffy, because they have not trained their speed yet. So it's considerably slow in a fast-moving fight. They can still fight someone else that's moving faster than them. They have been trained to be able to see the high speeds. Luffy was currently walking with the crew to see Brook's performance at the concert and cheer him on. Luffy had told them they were going to leave after the concert, so everyone was going to be relieved finally getting back out at sea. Luffy, who's Brook? The military asked Luffy, as she walked alongside him on his right. Brook? He's a big tall guy, oh, and he's a skeleton. Luffy said, giggling to himself, thinking back to first meeting Brook and asking him to join his crew. But what? Miku screamed, starting to cause a scene, getting the attention of others around her. Soon Miku started to notice them, and sent death glares at anyone who decided to look in her direction. Well, you'll see when you see him, Luffy said, still giggling at her brash attitude. Soon the crew had made it to the front gates of the huge theater center. It was an outside open-air concert, and there was a line that went as far as the eye could see. Obviously Brook was popular. Unfortunately, at the front of the line, a guy waiting to get in looked over and saw Luffy about to just walk in when he yelled out to him, "Hey, no cutting in line, who do you think you are?" The man yelled out at Luffy, "The pirate," Luffy said with a wide grin, and walked right past the man and into the front of the line, the crew following close behind, not wanting to wait in line either, especially if it was their Nakama that was performing anyways. At the front of the line there was a big stocky fellow with a smaller guy next to him with a checklist and clippers for tickets. The big burly man was obviously just there to stop anyone from breaking in, and was just listening to what the smaller man told him. "Tickets," the smaller man said, barely looking up. "Oh, actually I'm the new light installer, and I'm here with the lights. These are my employees from Tekida," Luffy said, causing a few of the crew to hold in spurts of laughter. What the hell was Luffy talking about? What the? Hey, you're not the light guy. ticket to get in, or leave, and buy one then get back in line. The man said, looking back at his checklist, until suddenly he was being held up by his collar, and his back was to a wall, and he was somehow becoming taller, other than the fact that his feet were in fact not on the ground. Would you rather I be the light guy, or punch you so you move guy? Luffy said. His smile was still intact. To the crew this was new. Luffy had never threatened people like that, but it seemed as he had changed, and for the most part for the better. He was a lot more mature about what he did, even if it was holding someone up by their collar to get through a door. Hey little guy, put him down or you answer Tiha. The bigger brute had started to say until a black and very sharp blade produced itself from thin air and was pointed directly at the brute. And if you take another step towards him then you'll be answering me, Zoro said with a large smirk on his face. Alright, just go. The smaller man said, breathing a sigh of relief when Luffy put the smaller man down and walked through waving his hand and thanking him. Everyone continued to follow him, some still holding in laughter. It was hilarious to some of them, mostly Shop frankly, and Chopper though. The theater was actually quite amazing. The size was colossal from how it looked outside of the slightly high walls. The area was basically a big open area of grass, and at one side there was a great big stage for performers. It was easily a 10-acre area surrounded completely by 40 feet walls that connected and came in slightly at the top, making a makeshift ceiling, but not going out more than a few feet from each side. Along with the 10 acres of grassland, there were a lot of people here to watch this. It seemed like there were tourists here solely to see this concert. The hype was at the peak of excitement until the large black curtain would unfold and produce the last missing member of the Straw Hat crew, and for the people their beloved Soul King. People had their own chairs and tents set up so they wouldn't have to stand, but no one had been holding set items in line though Luffy, as he looked around, and spotted a small store to the side renting a bunch of chairs. These people were making a killing. Sanji, Zoro. I think we need to relinquish some seating for our ladies from that rental shop, don't you think? You too, Usopp, Frankie, Luffy said. Super ideal, Luffy, but I have my own chair for myself, so we'll need one less, Frankie said. What about me, Luffy? Chopper said, a little hurt Luffy didn't name him. But Chopper, I need a strong guy like you to protect the girls, Luffy said, gasping exaggeratedly. Ha, you're right. It doesn't make me happy you called me a strong guy either, Baka Baka. Chopper said, blushing, holding his cheeks happily, teetering from side to side on his tiptoes. After a few minutes of the guys going to persuade the rental people to let them borrow some of their equipment, they came back with some lawn chairs and a tent for the sun that had actually started to beat down on everyone. Finally a chair. Nami called out. Hang on, let's get closer to the stadium, Luffy said, as they walked and got as close as they could, which was about 29 feet away. There was a white paint showing the boundaries of fans, so they wouldn't be all over the concert performance area. Of course, the area that Luffy and Zoro were now putting their tent down at was previously held by about 40 die-hard fans that wanted to be as close as possible, but were definitely persuaded to move to a new location by Sanji this time, wanting to be a part of it this time. I think it starts soon, Luffy said, sitting down in one of the lawn chairs they had set up under the tent. The tent was about 20 feet by 20 feet and was around 7 feet high. This was so other people at the back could see the performance area. The Straw Hats all sat down under the tent. Luffy was sitting in the middle with Miku on his left and Robin on his right. Directly behind him was Zoro with Sanji on his left. The two had started to become pretty close since last night. They sparred last night and had talked about some their past and what they had done over the last 2 years. Sanji sharing ever-presently more than the Moss had did, not wanting to show weakness by sharing, but was brought around to opening up by Sanji, telling his stories of the worst nightmare he had ever gotten himself into at the Yaoi Yaoi Paradise Island. Nami was sitting with support on the left of Sanji, and Frankie had quite the time barely being able to get into the tent, having to duck his head low lest he rip the tent in half with his head. He opted to sit in the grass in a comfortable position on the right of everyone. As for Chopper's, he opted to sit cutely on top of Luffy's head. Luffy was currently not wearing the straw hat he always wore, opting to let it fall to his back with the string around his neck, as Chopper half stood half sat on Luffy's mop of black unruly hair. Finally the curtains had drawn out and opened up slowly, letting everyone have a chance to see the start of the show. When the curtain fully opened, there was a dark black figure in the darkness. As it slowly stepped out into the light, Brook made his way onto the stage, guitar in hand. Brook walked onto the stage with an acoustic-looking guitar, but it had a wire plugged into it, signaling that it was a duo guitar, capable of being used as an electric guitar, as well as an acoustic. This proved true, and was put to the test, because, as soon as Brook walked out of the shadows, beat began to play the guitar, and a drum beat began to play in the background. Yo-ho-ho, keep up the drumroll, Brook called out, as he walked into the middle of the stage, and poured his heart into the song he had created, and it showed when he was jumping around the stage, really getting into the song he was playing. The song Brook made and played is Noreru no Mego, the love song. Google it. Behind Brook, there was a drummer rocking his solid beat for the song to be played, and there were even some backup singers for this specific song, all a part of a Soul's band. Name of the band is Soul's capital S. I mean. Are you ready? Go Stego. Ayunai no more walls. Aidishiki subbeat nice Sasajero to sing a love song. Brook continued to play the song, and was not satisfied until he had finished his song, completely drained from his music playing, and everyone including the Strawats, could feel the magic within the music Brook played, feeling 10 times better than when they had entered the area. Brook, amazing song. Who's your buddy? Luffy called out, a huge grin on his face, happy to have one of the most amazing musicians in his crew. Luffy? Brook screamed, and ran over to Luffy and the crew. Luffy, I have dire news, Brook said sadly. What is it, Brook? Luffy asked worriedly. I would need to quit being a musician, Brook started, but was interrupted by Nami. You're leaving. Because, I would like to become the head musician of the Strawats. Yo-ha-ho-ho. Brook screamed into his manic laughter, causing everyone a sweat drop. You had me worried for a second, Brook. I thought I lost a member for a second. Luffy laughed. Luffy, I would never leave this crew. I will always be loyal to you, Brook said, bowing his head, everyone in the crowd cheering him on, thinking he was bowing to the crowd, the same crowd Brook had kind of forgotten seeing Luffy. Alright, I also have some people that may be able to join. They are also pirates, Luffy, the drummer there, and the 3 backup singers. I made quite a few songs while we were apart, Brook said. Yes, no problem, Luffy replied. Boom, a loud crash was heard, which sounded more like a cannon being fired, and a wall being destroyed, as everyone turned towards the south side of the complex. It was directly across from the stage at the other end of the theater. The first thing anybody saw were the flags of the Marines, as a bunch of captains ran onto the field running around looking for whoever they had come for. This was the Strawats' cue to get the hell out of Dodge. Time to go, everyone, Luffy said, being followed by everyone that was there, including Brook, his drummer, and the 3 backup singers. Those guys were definitely pirates, being able to keep up with the rest of the crew. For the most part, normal people couldn't run as fast as them, not that they were using her anyways. Yo-ho-ho, where are we going, Luffy? Oh, also, Nami, can I see your panties? Brook called out, receiving a smack on the back of the head as they ran, or more specifically would have received a smack if he had not dodged it with a big smile, causing Nami to gain more than a few tick marks on her head. The ship, we have it ready to launch into the water. You're going to be amazed with what Frankie did, Luffy said with another smile evident on his face. Oh, it was nothing, but I cannot deny it's super, Frankie said, receiving nods of appreciation from everyone in his direction, that assured Frankie was one hell of a carpenter. Yo-ho-ho, Daisy, Swinkle, Charlie. There are those 3 back there, and Raleigh is the drummer. Brook called out, laughing all throughout the statements. What's so funny? The drummer in question asked to catch up to the front of the pack, where Luffy and Brook currently were, with Sanji and Zoro in close second, the rest behind them. Brook, you're funny, Luffy said, as he jumped over a big log that was in his way, everyone else doing the same, except for Frankie, who just rolled right through the wood. As soon as they reached the ship, the Marines were nowhere in sight. They had been lost the second they had left the theater, but not stopping was all in the plan of keeping the Marines off their tail. Stopping would just have allowed them to find them sooner or later, plus it was time to go anyway, and Luffy was impatient, as ever. Luffy, super ready, Frankie said, as everyone boarded the Million Sunny. Yes, launch us, Luffy called out. Frankie was currently below the ship in the Frankie level, where he could control all the main aspects of the ship, and was talking to everyone on the deck through the main speaker. Everyone, get into the ship, the dining area is a good spot. Frankie yelled through the microphone for everyone to scramble, as a large ball of power started to slowly expand at the back of the ship, exactly the same way it did on the Thousand Sunny, although this ball of energy was quite bigger, about 3 times bigger in fact. The energy condensed and disappeared into the hull at the back of the ship, only for it to come out in a larger volume, sending the ship flying off into the ocean towards the calm belt, where Impel Down is located. 6 days later, Luffy and the gang had finally reached the calm belt, where the wind suddenly decided to turn off, and would not offer any movement for the ship, as well as the fact that there were hungry monsters known as the Sea Kings below them in the ocean's depths. Yada. We're finally here, Luffy screamed while sitting on top of the lion's head at the front of the ship. During the 6 days they were at sea, everyone had been getting along, talking about what they had done over the 2 years they hadn't seen each other, and for the others such as Miku or the new musicians, they just met everyone else, and everyone got along fine. Miku however each night would go to Luffy's room, and attempt to knock on the door, only to stop, and turn around, and go back to her own room. Luffy had actually started to train everyone on the ship, while they were sailing towards the calm belt, and was starting off with 4 for the most basics, which was movement, and not being hit by an enemy. Of course about half of them already knew, so he started to train Zoro and Sanji first after he taught everyone the basics of story, and left them to their own devices. Flashback. Zoro, sit here, Luffy said. Alright then, Zoro said, sitting down cross-legged on the grass. Everyone was training their story that didn't know it. The rest stood and watched as Luffy was preparing Zoro's training. Okay, now close your eyes, Luffy said. Well, one eye. Luffy laughed. Alright then, now what? Zoro said in irritation. After a few seconds of nothing happening, Zoro was about to say something, but suddenly felt a stick break on the side of his face. Your head's a little too hard, we're gonna need a stronger stick, Luffy laughed, as he tossed the broken stick out of his hand, and pulled out a large metal pipe with a manic smile. Luffy, what the fuck do you think you're doing? Zoro screamed, not at all hurt by the stick that seemed to be completely ineffective on Zoro's thick skull. Training you of course. Luffy said, now sit still, and try to dodge it, feel it coming. Luffy said, concentrating. Luffy swung his metal pipe, only for Zoro to attempt to dodge, but ended up getting knocked in the head pretty hard, causing him to go flying into the side of the Million Sunny in a loud crash. No damage on the ship. Frankie built it great apparently. Well, Sanji takes turns with Zoro every 50 hits. I guess you could throw kicks at him if you want, and Zoro you can't use your swords on Sanji. Luffy said, but at this both of them sweat dropped, thinking it still was gonna hurt like hell when they got hit, which they knew they would. Luffy then walked over to Brook, Miku, Robin, and Frankie. First Luffy told Frankie and Brook to go ahead and spar, but only using spry and hand-to-hand combat. Both agreed, and took off flying around the ship that was currently sailing. But honestly, if anyone fell into the ocean, they would either get back on board, or be noticed by everyone who was currently out on the deck. Robin, Miku, you two will be training with me, Luffy said with a smile. Inwardly both girls smiled. They were gonna show this Minky D Luffy how strong they really were. Follow me, Luffy said simply, walking up to the head of the ship. What are we going to do? Miku asked curiously. She was wondering if he was going to just end up pairing them up and watching over everyone. It was a good idea in her mind. The very same thing going through Robin's head, although an unconscious thought of wanting Luffy to set Miku up with a task on her own, so he could spend all his attention on her, although she shook her head at that, as soon as the thought came up. I am going to spar with each of you, one-on-one. I want you to attack me, as you normally would, so I can know what I need to make you work on. Robin first, Miku second. Sounds alright, Luffy said. Receiving nods from both of them, Luffy prepared himself for Robin's attack. Again, Luffy said sternly, as he looked upon both of the panting members of the Straw Hat crew. We've done this shit at least 30 times, why do we have to do it again? Kneeling on one knee panting Miku screamed out in disgust at having to do said training again. It was getting repetitive, but more importantly it was tiring as hell. She wasn't sure how much longer she could go on. Luffy had fought both Miku and Robin separately, and gauged their skill levels. While Miku was fine, and needed to work on her speed, Robin needed both the fighting style, meaning hands-on punches and kicks, as well as speed training, along with endurance which Luffy was currently training them to do. Yada yada, I've told you already, Luffy said boredly after having to explain it for about the 10th time. Let's say I was an enemy, am I just going to give you time to rest? Luffy said dully. You shithead. No one is going to be able to keep chasing me like that, Miku screamed, getting up and putting her arms up in a comic annoyance, a small tick mark appearing near her ear. Luffy sighed at this, and decided there was nothing he could do. She could argue and pout about it all she wanted, but she was going to have to do the training, or she would never be ready to enter the new world with him. Miku-san, I think Captain Sama is right, we should keep training. An exhausted but determined Robin said, standing up ready for the next spurt of energy she was going to have to use in order to keep the pace correct. Whatever, Miku grumbled, putting her hands down and getting into position. Like, Luffy said, as soon as he did. Both Robin and Miku began to jump around the ship as fast as they could, Robin going at LVL 6, while Miku was able to keep a steady pace of LVL 10. Miku started at the beginning using LVL 12, but was shocked that after showing how fast she could go, Luffy then wanted them to run around the ship as fast as possible, for as long as they could, saying that they better not slack off because he would know. The two kept at it for about 3 minutes until Miku slipped up and let a lazy kick from exhaustion allow her to go flying into the ocean, a huge splash showing the side of the Million Sunny. Robin stopped her story and landed at the side of the ship looking into the water. She was sweating bullets, and her clothing was slightly damp. At this, Zoro and Sanji were still at their hole hit the other in the head. Because Luffy told us to, so it means I get to hit Dumbus with something training. When Zoro lost his concentration, and Sanji kicked Zoro off the ship towards the water where Miku had begun drowning, due to being a devil fruit eater. Damn it, Cook Fuchs, Zoro screamed out as he went flying into the water, effectively silencing him, as he muttered a couple choice words before recollecting himself and collecting up Miku and bringing her back to the surface of the ocean. As soon as Zoro came to the surface of the water, he didn't even seem phased or have hitched breathing. He was pretty normal for being kicked in the face across his ship into the ocean, and on top of which having to save someone. But as for Miku, as soon as she reached the precious air on top of the ocean ceiling, she began gasping for air, the ocean being a true tyrant to any and all devil fruit eaters, as well as her being super exhausted before plunging into the kryptonite of hers. I can't breathe, Miku squeaked out, and soon Zoro realized that he should probably go back to the top of the ship. Zoro instantly kicked his feet in the water, and shot out of the water about a foot, and was able to spur back up to the ship, and dropped Miku in an exhausted heap on the soft grassy area on the main deck of the Million Sunny. Remember, not all of the top deck is grass, just the area where Luffy was training the two, which is near the main doors to the staircase at the back of the ship. Miku laid on the ground on her hands and knees, attempting to collect oxygen that had been lost through the whole affair. Luffy soon walked over to her, as she continued to fill her lungs with air, and stood in front of her. The enemy would not have pulled you out, well the Marines would have, but they would have shackled you on top of it, Luffy said, squatting down so they were face to face. I didn't save you for two reasons. Number one, you weren't in danger even if you did fall, but I think falling into the ocean might help you understand why endurance is important. Oh, and maybe it might wash your bad mouth. Luffy said, pointing his tongue at her, getting back up and walking away. Just kidding, Monkey D. Luffy. Miku screamed. I'll get you back for this. Miku yelled out, getting to her feet and looking towards where Luffy was walking, shocked to notice the ship's deck was now missing a certain straw hat wearing pirate. Are you looking for me? Luffy said with his thumb on her neck. As he said it, he trailed it across her neck in a slitting motion. Awareness, you need to practice your observation as well. Luffy said, jumping backwards, as Miku threw a hard kick his way, Luffy doing a backflip, landing right next to Chopper, who had finally learned how to use it after only 5 hours, an impressive feat, as he had always been a quick learner, and was quite smart. Luffy? Chopper said happily. Good job, Chopper. Luffy said smiling, go ahead, and take a rest, you can restart tomorrow, for now you have the day off. Luffy said. Eh? Chopper squeaked, and jumped up on Luffy's head, and just sat there, where he usually was. Sanji and Zoro's heads were kind of occupied at the moment. One day later. Everyone had been training for the past day. To the disappointment of both Robin and Miku, Luffy started to drift off and leave them to their training, while he stood at the front of the ship on the Million Sunny's head, just watching them slowly drift across the calm belt, Frankie activating the rotors he had installed into the ship just in case the wind died down. I was surprised when Nami created her own wind for the ship, which was what she was currently doing when she wasn't training her sour. She would walk under the sails and create some wind that would last a good 5 to 15 minutes depending. The wind wasn't as strong as it could have been if she was completely focusing on creating the wind and constantly doing it. She was only doing it to help out in and out of her training. As Luffy had said, their training was more important at the time, since Frankie had their traveling power covered using a unique system of being able to concoct his own cola to power the ship, along with a new feature he was working on, leaving Brook to help the others with story. He promised it would be worth it to Luffy, who agreed. Working on whatever plan he had for power for the ship would be a good thing, and having Brook help out those who still couldn't quite grasp the concept of sour would be a big help, as Luffy had to keep watch at the front of the ship in this dangerous sea known as the calm belt. 2 hours later. Nami? Luffy shouted, looking towards the main deck. Yes, Luffy. She shouted back, wondering what he wanted. Take a break, you're done for the day, just work on using your wind for the ship for now. We can train you some more later, it seems you got the basics down at least. Luffy said, looking back to the front of the ship. Okay. Nami said exhaustedly. She was deflated after all of the training she had to endure. Brook had come over and given her pointers on how to make herself lighter by moving her body at a 45-degree angle, not missing an opportunity to get in a bone joke here and there. Nami had gotten mad at him and tried to smack him, but Brook merely shied away to prove his point further, how much she needed this technique. Nami walked over to some of the lawn chairs on the main deck on the grassy surface, and sat down just under one of the huge masts that pushed the Million Sunny forward, and threw up a constant wind to keep her sailing. THWASH. Suddenly a huge amount of water erupted in front of the ship on the left side. Everyone except Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji had seen it. At the time, Zoro and Sanji were still training their observation haki, and had gotten it down to being hit only 10 times out of 50 during their last 8 days of training. The both of them had rarely slept, keeping at their training, and usually talking to each other, having short conversations and breaks while they switched sides. They didn't talk while training, as they needed full concentration for their training to be effective. And it seemed to have paid off, as Sanji's leg came to a halt on the side of Zoro's head, as they both looked over to the explosion of water before it happened, as did Luffy. Guy? What was that? Yusuf screeched, barely seeing the huge amount of water fly into the air and come raining down upon the main deck of the ship from the aftermath of the jump of whatever had decided to create the disruption of peace. Zoro, Sanji. Luffy said. Instantly Zoro and Sanji shouted to him and were at his side. The three of them stood there looking at the spot where the water was finally coming back to peace after the eruption had disturbed its peace. Want another challenge? Luffy said, smirking. Both Zoro and Sanji looked at each other, knowing Luffy was messing with them again, but got baited into it nonetheless. Unless you're both too chicken to lose to the other, Luffy said, calmly shrugging. I can beat the shitty cook any day. Name the challenge, now. Zoro roared. Sanji had a little more composure, and just took it, knowing this couldn't end well. Over time Sanji had learned patience, not only in chasing women and overcoming his nosebleeds, but also with arguing when it was unnecessary. Although even though he had restraint, it did not mean he didn't feel completely compelled to say something, just because Zoro had said something that challenged their rivalry. Nice. There are 3 sea monsters down there. The one who kills 2 out of 3 wins. If you both kill the third one, then it's a draw, and you both have to do it. Luffy said. Okay, but do what? Zoro asked, confused. Dressing up as girls for the day, of course. Luffy said, as if it was the most common thing in the world, tilting his head to the side. Ah damn it, love splash. Zoro said, as a huge eruption of water splashed, but this time closer to the ship than last time. This signaled both Zoro and Sanji to do their job, and finish this stupid bet. Zoro unsheathed Shusei and dove towards the water, soaring upward, as the yellow monster beast with blue dots came up for its third jump in the water, and Zoro sliced clean through the beast and cut it in half, only for him to scour around in the air, looking for the next one. But just as fast as he had dispatched the Sea King, Sanji had finished off his with a Dime Jamble's fire shot, shooting multiple flames that ultimately extinguished in the water. But not before shooting through a Sea King at high velocities, and killing it after only 3 of the 7 shots he shot in. "Don't you dare curly cook. It's mine," Zoro roared, diving into the water and slicing the last one in half. Zoro came back up to the surface of the water, kicking himself out and jumping back up on top of the ship's deck to see Sanji waiting for him at the top. "Ha! I win," Zoro said, looking over to Sanji, who replied, "Congratulations, Zoro. I'm glad for you," and smiled as he walked towards Luffy. "So when do I have to do it?" Sanji asked deflatedly, not too happy he would have to dress as a girl. "You'll be wearing a pink apron for dinner tomorrow," Luffy stated. "That's it?" Sanji asked wide-eyed, well, the only eye that could be seen whitened. "Yeah. Sacrifices are hard to make, especially when they are really necessary, but are for the sake of your Nakama. Next time I'll make the bets more interesting though." Luffy smiled at Sanji. It thanked Kami he wouldn't have to wear women's clothing, not that it really bothered him, it wouldn't really be that bad, right? The girl's shirt was pretty much the same thing as a guy's shirt, just the colors and the size Sanji assumed, then realizing the more naval garments, as well as the upper garments that would go under said shirt, and Sanji's face blushed a bright red. "I'm gonna prepare dinner," Sanji shouted, running towards the main staircase to reach the kitchen dining hall. "What's gotten into Sanji?" Usopp asked, looking over to the staircase Sanji had just used to go make food. "He's passionate about his food," Luffy laughed, continuing his lookout. The end. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.